coasts and across the south where the wind is quite brisk. The isobars close together here, but this area of high pressure is providing, as I say, quite a lot of sunshine. There's a bit of a breeze along some North Sea coast and the western side of Scotland as well. With the breeze coming from the south here, I think parts of northern Scotland may see the highest temperatures today, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius along the Moray Firth. A little cooler further south, particularly along the coasts where we've got that breeze, and some of those North Sea coasts will be on the chilly side too, but generally temperatures getting into the mid-teens for most. Temperatures will drop off a little bit through this evening, quite rapidly under what will be largely clear skies. Just some straggly bits of cloud, just threatening some eastern coasts at times, but generally dry and clear through the evening across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. Further south also we've got those clear skies. Still that noticeable breeze and getting quite gusty across the southwest of England through the day today, particularly in western parts of Devon and Cornwall. Some lively gusts through this evening and overnight. The brisk breeze in the south will help to keep the temperatures up. Just a bit of cloud likely to form over the hills of northern England and eastern Scotland, and again along some coasts perhaps as that easterly breeze continues to bring the cooler winds from the North Sea. Inland, where we've got some shelter, temperatures could again just dip down to freezing. Most towns and cities staying a few degrees above, but certainly a fresh start to Wednesday. But once the sun is up, it's another sparkling day of sunshine to come tomorrow. Just again, the threat of some har on the coast of eastern Scotland. Any early cloud over the hills should disappear. Plenty of blue skies, long sunny spells. Again, feeling cool with a bit of a breeze in the south, but temperatures again for most in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's Tuesday, and it's 12 o'clock, and it's the 1st of April, and I'm not doing an April Fool's. That's just what I'm saying today. Hi, I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver. Well done, Tom.
Well, it's awful April. The avalanche has unleashed, and sadly, we're not being fooled. Well, water and energy bills are up, council and car tax is up, MP's pay is up. Just how will the changes impact you? Get in touch with us throughout the show.
As we enter awful April, the real question is, will you be drowning your sorrows as bills and taxes are hiked? We're in Hartlepool finding out how the price increases are affecting real people.
Well, elsewhere, the Sentencing Council has suspended plans for new guidelines amid a mass backlash over the two-tier justice row. We're speaking to a former Attorney General asking, should the unelected Quango be scrapped altogether?
And we're live in Birmingham throughout this afternoon as a major incident is declared in the UK's second city. An estimated 17,000 tonnes of waste remains uncollected, and bin workers continue to strike.
The rubbish is piling high in Britain's second city. 17,000 tonnes of it on the streets here of Birmingham, and there's no sign of it ending.
Right, have you regained your voice box?
I think just about.
Excellent, excellent. It's probably because of all this negative news, you know, you can't find the words to express yourself.
I mean, it is extraordinary, just the number of pieces of bad news that we have all taking effect on this same day. Bills, tax, impositions of every kind.
Yeah, bills, council tax, energy, water, broadband, TV licence fee, car tax, rail fares are already up, of course. Mobile tariffs, stamp duty. Have I forgotten anything?
Well, energy's up by 6% across the year as well.
Goodness me. Yeah, so it's going to be a costly year. But it's all OK, because the Chancellor told us we're going to be better off by the end of the Parliament, to the tune of £500 each. So you don't need to worry. You don't need to worry. But we are going to be talking to some experts who may actually be able to help you. Because if you are facing these bills and you are worried about them, there are presumably, I hope at least, some ways that you can try and soften the blow.
Absolutely, and that's what this show is really going to be focusing on today, how you can navigate what is becoming an increasingly difficult path. But if you are struggling to keep your head above water, or if that money in your pocket just doesn't go as far as it used to, we do want to hear from you. gbnews.com/your say. Do get in touch with any questions you might have. We're going to have experts throughout the show, and we're going to try and take this cost of living crisis head on.
We are
All
indeed.
to come after the latest headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB Newsroom. Millions of households across the country will see their bills increase today, from energy and water prices to council tax and stamp duty. The 7 hikes in prices and tax coincide with the new financial year in what's being dubbed Awful April for consumers. Water bills are increasing by an average of £10 a month in England and Wales, while gas and electricity are up by £111 a year. Also today, the basic salary of members of Parliament has increased by 2.8%. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister visited the City of London this morning as the annual increases to the National Living Wage and National Minimum Wage take effect today. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
It all feels like it's coming at once. This is a difficult April for so many people, and where the government has real cause, such as the national insurance jobs tax, which is cascading through the economy in the way that we said 7 months ago, that's the area that the government has the most ability to change things even at this late stage.
The cost of living is already unbearable. That's what Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said this morning during a press conference with Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer Mel Stride. The press conference comes as the Conservatives accused Labour of introducing a jobs tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves increased the national insurance for employers in her budget last year, which comes into force on the 6th of April. Employers' national insurance contributions will increase from 13.8% to 15%. Elsewhere, plans for new sentencing guidelines for offenders from minorities have now been delayed after the government announced draft legislation to block the changes. The new guidelines issued by the Sentencing Council says judges should get a pre-sentence report before sentencing someone of an ethnic, cultural or faith minority, alongside other groups such as those aged 18 to 25, women and pregnant women. That guidance had been due to come into effect today, but Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced she would introduce a draft law to the Commons aimed at blocking the guidelines on the same date. The Independent Sentencing Council insisted the new instructions were necessary and appropriate, but would not be implemented while the introduction of a bill was imminent. Speaking overnight from the White House, US President Donald Trump says he is settled on a tariff plan and that the US will be nice, as Downing Street conceded yesterday that tariffs would probably affect Britain. In a new development, Sir Keir Starmer has been warned that there can be no free trade without free speech, as the US State Department issued a statement saying it was concerned about freedom of expression in the United Kingdom. President Trump's tariffs, including a 25% tariff on all automotive imports, are set to come into effect on his so-called Liberation Day tomorrow. He also said he wants to see Russian President Vladimir Putin follow through and make a deal to end the war in Ukraine.
You're going to see in 2 days, which is maybe tomorrow night or probably Wednesday, you're going to see, and they're reciprocal. So whatever they charge us, we charge them, but we're being nicer than they were. We have a lot of countries, friend and foe. I always say friend and foe, but the friend in many cases is worse than the foe. They took advantage of us, and we are going to be very nice by comparison to what they were. The numbers will be lower than what they've been charging us, and in some cases maybe substantially lower, but we sort of have a world obligation perhaps. But we're going to be very nice.
3 people have died and 3 people have been taken to hospital following a crash near Heathrow Airport in West London. The London Ambulance Service said they were called at 5 minutes to midnight last night to reports of a road traffic collision on Bedfont Road in Feltham. Crews treated 6 people and sadly 3 people were declared dead at the scene. 3 patients were taken to hospital. Ambulance crews, members of the Hazardous Area Response Team and London's Air Ambulance all attended. And Birmingham City Council has declared a major incident to address the impact of the ongoing bin strike, as it estimates 17,000 tonnes of waste remain uncollected around the city. Members of the Unite Union in Birmingham are holding an all-out strike, which has led to rubbish piling up in the streets. The council says daily blocking of its depots by pickets has meant workers cannot get their vehicles out to collect waste. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past midday. Now, this awful April avalanche is unleashed. And sadly, we're not fooling you because, as you probably know, water and energy bills...
well, they're up.
Council and car tax...
up as well.
Stamp duty and broadband...
yes, you guessed it, up.
Well, I think it's time to take a closer look at the numbers. So let's go along to the video wall here, and we'll be able to take a look at some of these big bill impositions. Because, of course, across the state of the UK economy, we have seen our bills go up. It's not just bills, it's tax too. So why don't we talk through some of those big bill increases? Because Emily and I have been looking at some of these details.
It's the final week to see how you can spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Compared with 5, 6, 8-9 years ago, but compared with when we were children, where you wouldn't have, you weren't allowed to go swimming in the rivers because they were so disgusting. We've just got used to the idea, and quite rightly, that it's pretty much safe to swim in most rivers in Britain, and it's the last kind of decade that's been reversed through, the bad case of sewage that's been going into the rivers.
Now, Chris has got in touch, and he's a little bit sceptical about the hype around some of these increases. Says, where was the outcry last April when broadband, mobile and council tax all went up just like every other year? Is this year worse than ever?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if it's worse than ever. The water's the really shocking one, and the fact that we've had an increase of utility bills. I think this time last year, actually, energy bills were going down slightly. So we had 3, they come in quarterly bunches, and we've now had 3 in a row. So our energy bills are considerably higher than when Russia invaded Ukraine, but they're not much higher than they were at the peak. We're actually slightly down from the very, very peak.
But I guess no one was expecting it to just be so sustained, these high energy bills.
Yeah, and the 6% is again, it doesn't sound very much, but it's a lot. It's £111 on average, and that has come, it's such an enormous bill. So I think, and people were expecting it to be less than 6% when it was announced a couple of months ago.
We're also seeing stamp duty rise today. This could be particularly biting for people looking to move home.
Yeah, this is particularly bad for first-time buyers. So they were actually, again, if you're looking for the positive spin, this is not like a sudden shock increase. This is a reversal of what was called a stamp duty holiday. So to encourage first-time buyers to get onto the housing ladder, they were essentially let off stamp duty. Well, that holiday's over. They are now going to have to pay stamp duty unless it's a very cheap property. So, yeah, that's not great for the housing market, and that has all sorts of knock-on effects, potentially, for people like DIY, retailers, for carpet companies, because when you move house, you just spend a lot of money in the consumer economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the people who do the painting, the construction workers, for your, if you want to do something to the house, all of those people, the furniture shops, everything is hit if people aren't moving house.
Although I have to say I did paint my own house. I'm not sure how well I did it, but
well, people are going to have to do that probably with all these bills going up.
Yeah, no, I did a prosecco and paint party, and it was marvellous fun. The trick.
What was the end result like?
Well,
wonky.
Yeah, slightly wonky, but enormous fun, and sort of you can convince people to work for you for free if you can provide a social occasion. That's the lesson I learned.
I love how it wasn't a pint and paint; it was a prosecco and paint. I love it. Harry Waller, please stay with us. We're going to go to our GBNews reporter Sophie Reaper, who's in Hartlepool, talking to people about awful April, about all these bills going up. Sophie.
Well, good afternoon to you both. It is quite overwhelming, isn't it, when you think about all of these bills? I think people perhaps wouldn't mind so much if it were just 1 or 2, but when you think about energy, water, council tax, car tax, broadband, stamp duty, all of these things, it does become quite overwhelming. And one industry that's particularly going to suffer is the pub industry. So joining us now is Scott Gaiety, who is the landlord here at Gaiety. Scott, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Talk to me about how you're going to be particularly impacted this awful April.
Well, we do. When you get the price increases, people think because they said they haven't put beer up, the pub prices should be kept the same. But it's energy prices and that for us, so we pay once on the energy price for the gas, electric, and everything that's on the inside the building. Then we pay for the manufacturers who make it. That goes up. The wholesalers who sell it to us, and then all the other things you've just mentioned that goes up on top of that.
So there is a huge knock-on that ultimately means you have to put up your prices, doesn't it? What kind of response have you had from customers on that?
Well, we're pretty lucky. Most of our customers understand because every pub's got the same problems I have. We all seem to put them up roughly about the same sort of price because what the wholesalers tell us what they're going to start charging us from now on.
But have you noticed perhaps a decline in the amount of customers you're getting through the door?
Oh, certainly. There's a lot less people come through the door. But the people have got the same problems that we've got. The electric has gone up, the gas has gone up, so they've got less disposable income. And the easiest thing to save money on is don't come to the pub.
Now, I actually said to you earlier, didn't I, as a joke, would it just be cheaper to give pints to people in cans, didn't I? But you said yes. What kind of position does that put you in as a landlord?
Well, it gets you to a point where you think to yourself, is it... The first thing you try to do, we always try to cut the costs so we can make it cheap as we can for the customers, so more customers want to come in. But we don't want to get to a point where you're drinking bottles and cans into a pub. You want to be drinking out the pumps, drinking draft, otherwise you might as well just drink in the house.
And obviously you have many staff members here to keep things going. How are the price hikes this April going to affect you in terms of staffing?
Well, we've got to increase. You've got to increase the staff's wages, because obviously they've got homes, children, families to look after, and it's another thing that has to go on top of the beer. So every time something goes up, everything has to go straight to the pump.
We had the spring statement last week with the Chancellor. Did you feel anything she said in that would give you any additional support? Do you feel the government are supporting pubs?
Oh, there's no support at all for pubs. Just the amount of tax that's on beer and things like that, they're just not giving us a chance.
What would you ask for from the government in terms of support then?
Well, try to make it a bit fairer, what they charge tax on supermarket alcohol compared to pubs alcohol. Instead of putting it all on one, try to split it between the two of them, and then the alcohol prices in pubs come down straight away.
If things continue the way they are, what do you see as the future, not just for Gaieties, but the pub industry in the UK as a whole?
Individual pubs like myself, we can. Big chain pubs, they've got a buying power so they can keep the prices down. People like myself and other pubs, a lot of pubs down here are the same. We haven't got the buying power, so we can't haggle with the brewery suppliers to get our prices down. So we'll just be priced out of the market, and then it'll just be chain pubs.
Scott, that is truly a terrifying prospect, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. There we are, just another perspective here in Hartlepool today about how awful April is affecting people across the board.
Thanks, Sophie. Sophie Reaper there in a pub in Hartlepool for us, affecting every industry, really, these hikes. Just on the minimum wage, Harry Wallop, still in the studio with us, a consumer journalist, because Keir Starmer is presenting this as, obviously, a government win. We're giving people the pay rise they deserve. And I'm sure a lot of people out there feel as though they deserve a pay rise, but they're not giving the people a pay rise. They're forcing businesses to give people a pay rise. And will that be a worry for the economy, for smaller businesses?
Well, there's two sides to this coin, which is that minimum wage has now gone up 4 years in a row above the rate of inflation. So it's gone up by nearly 7%. So £11.44 to £12, is it £12.22, I think? So what you have then is you have, in theory, a whole cohort of low-paid workers who are paid better than they were a year ago. In theory, they can go out and they can spend the money on pints in the pub. Yeah. So this is what's meant to happen. But, of course, if you're then employing people, it then becomes very expensive. And the hospitality industry has been hit particularly hard because the increase in employers' national insurance, and it's the threshold that's been lowered. So you start having to pay part-time workers national insurance contributions, and the hospitality industry basically relies on part-time workers, weekend workers. So it's getting very expensive to employ people. So, on the one hand, your customers might have a bit more money in their pocket. That's the idea. But if you can't employ the people to serve them, then you're in all sorts of trouble.
Especially seasonal work, part-time work. I mean, the threshold was above £9,000. Now it's gone down to £5,000. I mean, that's almost a halving of that threshold. So many more people being dragged into tax, and those people will be the lowest paid people.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, now the Treasury hasn't done a very good job explaining it. It was to try and capture people who had a series of part-time jobs. So they worked at this supermarket during the week, then they worked in the pub at the weekend and something else. So they were, in theory, actually well above the threshold, but they didn't have to pay it because they had a series of part-time jobs. But if that was the logic, it wasn't very well explained, and most people, most employers, of course, they're suddenly having to find huge amounts extra to employ these part-time workers.
OK, well, Harry Wallop, thank you very much indeed for helping us get to grips, or at least understand some of these issues. Just finally, while we've got you, what's the best thing to do if you want to try and fight these hikes? I mean, across the board, really.
Well, I know lots of people always say this, but it really is true. Shop around. So energy bills, there are still plenty of deals out there, which if you're prepared to fix your energy bill for the next year or next 18 months, you have the guarantee of knowing what you're going to pay. There is a small risk that, the price cap will go down, but most people think it's not going to go down by much. You know what you're paying, going to get a cheaper rate right now, so fix him.
Yeah, and then you have the peace of mind, at least in a way, that it's not going to change for a while.
Yeah.
Shop. Well, Harry Wallop, thank you so much indeed for coming in and talking us through all of that. Plenty more to come here on Good Afternoon Britain. Indeed, we're speaking to a former Attorney General as the Sentencing Council suspends plans for new guidelines amid this mass backlash over the so-called two-tier justice row. Don't move a muscle.
We're proud proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
If you've read Spare, you'll know that Prince Harry's very open, isn't he, about his drug taking in the past. So it's going to be interesting to see if he was honest in his visa application.
Well, we're absolutely waiting for it. Yes, he admitted he took cannabis, cocaine and magic mushrooms, as we know in Spare, and also the Netflix series. He said that. There's been so much talk about it, and obviously Judge Carl Nichols originally said he refused to release any footage, saying that he basically because of Prince Harry's privacy. But as we know, Trump, border security and application of rule is one of his priorities. And I do see Harry as a pawn, really, for Trump and collateral. So everyone's waiting to see what happens. Tuesday is the day, D-Day. We don't know whether Prince Harry is quaking in his boots. But, he quit being a working royal. Well, did he get preferential treatment? We don't know. There is possible misconduct. Apparently, DHS says that actually releasing the paperwork won't shed any light onto how things work. But there are thoughts as well that he could have entered on a special visa. Now, this is an A1 visa that deals with immigration paperwork. And it's a special kind of visa for heads of states and royal people. So Prince Harry could have got through on that, but we're waiting to hear. It's D-Day tomorrow.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 24 minutes past 12 and a lot's happened overnight in the last 24 hours. Yes, after the threat of emergency legislation, a legal challenge from the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, the Sentencing Council decided to delay the introduction of new sentencing guidelines for offenders from minority backgrounds.
And yet, this is a delay. The Sentencing Council could, of course, drop its two-tier justice proposals entirely. It's chosen not to do so, even under the threat of that legislation in Parliament and a legal challenge in the courts.
So we're asking, is the Sentencing Council fit for purpose?
Well, joining us is the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Sir Michael, this is an odd situation. You've had unanimity from the government and the opposition and intransigence up until last night from the Sentencing Council.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, Tom. And actually, we've got some quangos out of control in this country, and that's a classic example of one of them. Here we have a quango, the Sentencing Council. It hasn't a God-given right to exist. You know, it's only existed since 2009, and its predecessor before that since 2003. Things worked perfectly well in our common law system for hundreds of years before the sentencing guidelines came into place. There's no reason why they should have to exist, but here the government is acting after Rob Jenrick's success in threatening a judicial review, in bringing this to the public attention that we were going to have this two-tier sentencing regime. The government then says that, oh, well, thank you very much to the Sentencing Council for pausing, as if the Sentencing Council is doing them a favour. Well, I think the Sentencing Council here has acted very precipitately, and in fact has really controversially put itself up against the wishes of the government, the democratically elected government, and that is unquestionably highly controversial.
And this is a win for Robert Jenrick, then, is it? Rather than, you know, Keir Starmer and Shamana Mahmood. Keir Starmer yesterday spoke to us. He said, we're going to bring in emergency legislation. Could it have been that?
Well, it was no doubt, Emily, a combination of different things, but I think Rob Jenrick clearly brought the public's attention to this topic, and he threatened judicial review, which I think they would have probably lost, quite frankly, if that action had gone ahead. Of course, we'll never know now because they caved in at the last moment, but have they caved in? Because what they've said is we'll pause things. So that hasn't really done many favours to the government. The government will now have to bring forward legislation, speedy legislation, and that's very expensive. It takes a lot of parliamentary time because you've got a quango that's supposed to act for the government, acting as if it were superior to the government of the day. And we've had this with both the Conservatives and Labour governments where quangos have acted in a way that they really think that they are all-powerful.
Now, we haven't yet seen what shape or form this legislation will take, whether it will be a one-line bill saying you can't have this specific element of the guidance, or whether it will be more all-encompassing. Well, frankly, we don't know if the government's made its mind up yet on this. What do you think the government should do here? Should it be just sort of outlawing this sort of two-tier element in sentencing guidelines, or should it go much, much further?
Well, the easiest thing, Tom, to do would be for the government to say what Rob Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch's position has been, which is to say, look, frankly, let's have a piece of legislation that says that a Minister of the Crown can overrule the Sentencing Council in the exercise of their discretion. That way round, you don't have to pinpoint. You don't have to think in advance what the next problem might be in a year's time or 2 years' time. You can give the Minister the power to overrule a quango. The quangos are supposed to work for us, the general public. It's not supposed to be... At the moment, you've really got the tail wagging the dog.
I'm just reading here in Financial Times, according to the Financial Times, we currently have more than 300 quangos, and they employ almost 391,000 full-time staff. This is a big business.
Well, as GBNews knows, of course, there's another quango called Ofcom, which has been pretty controversial and...
I won't have a word said against them.
But I think we both know that's not right. But I think, you know, the truth of the matter is it's not the only one. I had Secretaries of State coming to me when I was Attorney-General saying, I'm getting blamed for things that quangos in my department or under the responsibility of my department are doing, and yet I don't actually have any levers to pull here, because the way they've been established, the way that legislation has been set up for these quangos, often hasn't given the minister the power to overrule. And so then you'll get a quango which adopts quite an air of arrogance.
And yet, historically in our system, we have had Parliament reluctant to give too much diktat to ministers. And I think a lot of the time people think, oh, Parliament and ministers is exactly the same thing. But very often it's not. Do we want the power to go to ministers, one person who can then overrule anything? Or would it better sit with a deliberative body like Parliament that is elected rather than appointed?
Well, Parliament, of course, the ministers are responsible to Parliament, and they are under a great deal of scrutiny, both, and rightly so, both in the press and in Parliament to make sure they behave appropriately. And if they were to exercise their power, in my view, they'd do so very reluctantly, because they would know that they would be open immediately to an urgent question in the House of Commons. They'd be open to challenge their own judicial review. So they're unlikely to be too sort of cowboy-like about it. I think that they would be very cautious. At the moment, too much power has been taken away from ministers.
And Sir Michael, there has been some commentary around this saying that it's not very wise for the government to pick a fight, they're saying, with judges and the judiciary. But I think there's a lot of people who are deeply sceptical about the power that lawyers seem to have in this country.
Well, I think that's right, and I'm very concerned about that, because I think we are now getting a divergence between the judiciary and the wishes of the general public as expressed at the ballot box. And I think judges have to be very careful that they don't overreach. We had a controversy only a few weeks ago, I know we spoke about on your show, where the Lady Chief Justice criticised something that both parties had said in the House of Commons at Prime Minister's questions.
Oh, yes, yes.
And again, as another example, quite a rare example, but perhaps happening a little bit more often, where Labour and the Conservatives both agreed that they were in the right, and the Lady Chief Justice said you weren't. And that was pretty controversial interference in the parliamentary process, in my view.
It's an absolutely fascinating time where we do see this sort of big row rubbing up, you know, the judiciary versus the politicians. I mean, ultimately, one side has to come down on the other. But Sir Michael Ellis, thank you indeed for talking us through that issue, former Attorney General, of course.
Lots to think about there. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Yes, in just a moment, we're going to be hearing from the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. Stay with us for her thoughts on awful April. That's after your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Millions of households across the country will see their bills increase today, from energy and water prices to council tax and stamp duty. The 7 hikes in prices and tax coincide with the new financial year in what's being dubbed awful April for consumers. Water bills are increasing by an average of £10 a month in England and Wales, while gas and electricity are up by £111 a year. Also today, the basic salary for members of Parliament has increased by 2.8%. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister visited the City of London this morning as the annual increases to the National Living Wage and National Minimum Wage take effect. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
It all feels like it's coming at once. This is a difficult April for so many people, and where the government has real cause, such as the national insurance jobs tax, which is cascading through the economy in the way that we said 7 months ago, that's the area that the government has the most ability to change things even at this late stage.
The cost of living is already unbearable. That's what Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said this morning during a press conference with Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. The press conference comes as the Conservatives accused Labour of introducing a jobs tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves increased the national insurance for employers in her budget last year, which comes into force on the 6th of April. Employers' national insurance contributions will increase from 13.8% to 15%. And speaking overnight from the White House, US President Donald Trump says he has settled on a tariff plan and that the US will be nice, as Downing Street conceded yesterday that tariffs would probably affect Britain. In a new development, Sir Keir Starmer has been warned that there can be no free trade without free speech, as the US State Department issued a statement saying it was concerned about freedom of expression in the United Kingdom. President Trump's tariffs, including a 25% tariff on all automotive imports, are set to come into effect on his so-called Liberation Day tomorrow. He also said he wants to see Russian President Vladimir Putin follow through and make a deal to end the war in Ukraine. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2910 and €1.1959. The price of gold is £2,425.96 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,630 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Cleethorpes and Barton on Humber because of a faulty train. In Derbyshire, the A628 Woodhead Pass is closed each way between Flouch and Glossop after an accident causing queues. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed southbound with a shed load of gravel between junctions 5 and 4A towards the M42 near Birmingham. It's taking around 40 minutes in queues from junction 7. And in Hertfordshire, the A602 is partly blocked by an accident on Stevenage Road in Hitchin, causing queues each way towards there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:38, and Birmingham City Council, it's not in a good way, is it?
No.
No, they're increasing their council tax, and they're also now declaring a major incident to deal with the bins crisis that's taking over their streets.
So, higher tax and worse services.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. It's absolutely dreadful.
Well, it's all because members of the Unite union are holding an all-out strike after the scrapping of waste collection and recycling officer roles.
OK, well, the major incident will now focus on stepping up cleaning. Oh, that'd be nice. And clearing the bin backlog, also nice.
Well, let's go straight to the scene. Our reporter Steve Bennett joins us from Birmingham now because, Steve, I mean, it's not a pretty sight.
It really isn't. It's not pretty to look at, it's not pretty to smell, and it's been this way since March the 11th, when the all-out strike began, when those bin workers said enough is enough, and they joined the picket lines and they went on strike. And as you mentioned there, it's all over the fact that Birmingham City Council have made that position redundant, the waste and recycling collection officer position redundant, which Unite Union says will cost bin workers £8,000 a year if they're made redundant or they have to retrain into other roles. So that's where this all stems from. But let me just bring you over to just one pile of rubbish. There's hundreds around this city. This one here at the end of a residential street. And what the locals are saying to us is, as you mentioned, the taxes are going up, but they're getting nothing for their money. They're getting nothing for their council tax. What they're having to do now is having to tip their waste onto street corners like this because they've got no more space to keep it in their homes. And they haven't had collections in this area for 4 weeks, and in most areas in Birmingham for 7 weeks. So earlier on, we spoke to some of the locals on this residential estate, and here's what they had to say.
Oh, it's awful. It's disgusting. It's horrible to just, when I'm walking the dog, there's so much rubbish on the floor, and it's just really put a horrible vibe on the whole city.
They need to get around the table and talk.
And what are you doing with your rubbish?
Well, stacking on the end of the road. All our bins are full now. We're having to store it in the house. We've just had a council tax rise. I mean, why should we pay that when we're not getting a job done?
Becoming a mountain now. Also, there's also piles of bins just piling up on the street corners. And it's becoming a mountain of rubbish now, and they have to do something.
And by declaring a major incident, Birmingham City Council can now ask for help from local authorities and for the government, as you mentioned, to help try and clear some of this rubbish off the street corners. But it's going to take ages because the backlog is so vast, as the locals were saying, and there's no sign of it letting up just yet. And it really is at crisis point. The last time I was here on March the 11th, it was already at crisis then. It certainly is now. And at that time, the locals had signed a petition to Birmingham City Council to ask them to sort this immediately. And as you can see, as yet, it has not happened.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, imagine living in that house right behind you. You've got all of the bins right outside your front door and your window. It's not exactly nice for that family, whoever lives there, sorry. But can you tell us a little bit about... It must smell where you're standing right there. I mean, that's old rubbish now, isn't it, Steve?
Yes. Absolutely right. And we have spoken to the folks in this house and a house slightly further down that has a similar rubbish pile right outside it. And that's exactly what they said. They said it smells, and when the wind changes, they can smell it. There's been reports of rodents coming out of here as well. So it's really not ideal for these people. And as you said, it's all getting dumped right outside their house from all the homes in this area, and then it's staying there. Nothing's being collected. So really is a serious situation for this city.
All right, Steve Bennett, thank you very much indeed. I hope you get something sweet smelling soon. The stench must be insufferable. Thank you, Steve. What a disaster for Birmingham residents. I don't know if the dumps are open. Can someone let me know if the dumps are open? Because if the dumps are open, I probably would try and take my rubbish to the dump directly.
I'd hope there'd be some people doing sort of charitable work for those that couldn't take their rubbish away. I mean, I know it's a big burden, but you'd think that sort of if it was your street that there was loads of rubbish at the end, surely you'd want to muck in a bit and turf it out.
If not everyone's doing it, then people aren't going to do it, are they? Because they're going to feel like the right loser who's picking up after everyone else. I don't know. Although on my street, when there's rubbish left out, I do tend to pick it up just because I don't like the sight of it.
I feel like
but that's a lot of rubbish, isn't it?
Picks little bits off the floor, you know, just a crisp packet or something, and just...
Yeah, people don't care for where they live, do they? I also think it makes a difference whether you own or rent your home.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a depressing sight. We're also going to be talking about later how a lot of people working in councils are earning absolutely mega salaries, far higher than the Prime Minister even. I think 230-odd salaries in councils up and down the country are more than the Prime Minister. And then there are loads more when you take in all the remuneration.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a crazy situation. Meanwhile, bins left uncollected. But if you want to get away from all of the rubbish, well, shall we have a look at the travel forecast?
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're heading further afield over the next few days, it is going to be unsettled across much of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece, where very lively showers and thunderstorms will continue during Wednesday. Showery for southern Italy, but northern Italy largely fine with some sunshine. South of France into Spain and Portugal. We've got spells of rain moving in along with a gusty wind, and that unsettled weather sticks around for the end of the week, whilst the showers become fewer and less frequent in Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, we'll be live on Downing Street, where our political correspondent has been in a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson. Or should I say political correspondent rather than political? Well, we'll be hearing from the leader of the Conservative Party as well, Kemi Badenoch. We've sat down with her to talk about cost of living. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Blue skies pretty much all the way today. Temperatures, well, varying quite a bit across the country. Some chilliness on the coasts and across the south where the wind is quite brisk. The isobars close together here. But this area of high pressure is providing, as I say, quite a lot of sunshine. There's a bit of a breeze along some North Sea coast and the western side of Scotland as well. With the breeze coming from the south here, I think parts of northern Scotland may see the highest temperatures today, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius along the Murray Firth. A little cooler further south, particularly along the coasts where we've got that breeze, and some of those North Sea coasts will be on the chilly side too, but generally temperatures getting into the mid-teens for most. Temperatures will drop off a little bit through this evening, quite rapidly under what will be largely clear skies. Just some straggly bits of cloud, just threatening some eastern coasts at times, but generally dry and clear through the evening across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. Further south also we've got those clear skies. Still that noticeable breeze and getting quite gusty across the southwest of England through the day today, particularly in western parts of Devon and Cornwall. Some lively gusts through this evening and overnight. The brisk breeze in the south will help to keep the temperatures up. Just a bit of cloud likely to form over the hills of northern England and eastern Scotland, and again along some coasts perhaps as that easterly breeze continues to bring the cooler winds from the North Sea. Inland, where we've got some shelter, temperatures could again just dip down to freezing. Most towns and cities staying a few degrees above, but certainly a fresh start to Wednesday. But once the sun is up, it's another sparkling day of sunshine to come tomorrow. Just again, the threat of some har on the coast of eastern Scotland. Any early cloud over the hills should disappear. Plenty of blue skies, long sunny spells. Again, feeling cool with a bit of a breeze in the south, but temperatures again for most in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 minutes to 1, and let's go live to Downing Street. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has been inside the building behind her for a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. Catherine, what have we learned?
Yes, good afternoon from Downing Street. Well, there's been this wave of price rises, hasn't there? An awful April as it's beginning. We had a little bit of discussion about that. The government very, very keen to talk up what they say their victories are in terms of putting the national living wage up, supporting parents with breakfast clubs, the price rise of £475 for state pensions, etc. But look, to be honest, the conversation was, I would say, 95% about the tidal wave that might be about to hit us in the next day or two with tariffs. Tomorrow is Liberation Day in the United States. That's what Donald Trump has dubbed it. And it seems like we are not going to be immune from these global tariffs that we're expecting him to roll out between 10 and 20%. We had thought that we might have got a deal carved out in time to get out of this, basically, but it looks like that is not going to happen. Now, I would sum up the government's approach in 2 words, which is don't panic, channeling Captain Mannering, showing my age, from Dad's Army, but they're very keen to stress that they are just keeping calm, taking a pragmatic approach. They say that they've been working very hard and that talks on a trade deal are at an advanced stage. They say they've got to a place in just a few months that would have taken months or years under ordinary circumstances. Of course, these are not ordinary circumstances at all. They were also asked about free speech and whether that might be a sticking point in these trade negotiations, because there's been some suggestions that some in the US administration are keeping a very close eye on free speech in this country. We heard what JD Vance said to the Prime Minister in the Oval Office a few weeks ago, also So the attack that he had basically on us in particular at the Munich Security Conference on free speech, and in particular this case of this woman, Livia Toski-Bolt, who was protesting near in a buffer zone for an abortion clinic with a sign that said, "Here to talk if you want." Now, they have said, the Prime Minister's official spokesman, that they're not aware that this has come up in discussions. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said as much today. The government said that it is vital that a woman who uses abortion services has a right to do so without being exposed to distress. There was also questions about the state visit. Of course, Donald Trump was over the moon, wasn't he, when Keir Starmer produced that letter from the King. Questions over whether that might be in doubt if these tariffs are slapped on us. They said, that's a matter for Buckingham Palace, and the Prime Minister is looking forward to Donald Trump's state visit. But they say that they're keeping all options on the table. They don't think tariffs are in anybody's interest. They want us to be a free trading nation. But look, this is very difficult. They don't want to upset Donald Trump. They're being very, very softly. They're hoping that the tariffs may come in and that they will quickly negotiate a carve-out. But look, we don't know what's going to happen. If it happens, we know the OBR have said there'll be a significant economic hit, and if we retaliate, it could be even worse. So let's see. We are expecting an announcement from the States probably tomorrow at around 8 o'clock.
OK, well, we'll stay tuned for that. Catherine, thank you very much indeed for telling us everything that's going on at the heart of government, really, or what at least they want us to hear. Do you think that you should find yourself in trouble with the law for holding a sign saying "Here to talk if you want" outside an abortion clinic?
No. I think if you harass if you harass a woman who's trying to access an abortion clinic, that's one thing. I mean, if you shout and harangue and intimidate, that's one thing. If you're just standing there silently, praying in your head or holding a sign saying, "Here if you need to talk," I mean, on what planet is that intimidation?
Yes, I'm not sure that's going to be the most difficult thing about making that tough decision to have an abortion, right? I mean, it's not going to be
and frankly,
a placard that pushes you over the edge, is it?
If the way we avoid a 0.6% of GDP economic contraction is by, sticking to that foundational free speech principle that you should be able to stand holding a sign saying "Here if you need to talk," well, maybe that's exactly what we should do. Much more to come in the next hour.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Blue skies pretty much all the way today. Temperatures, well, varying quite a bit across the country. Some chilliness on the coasts and across the south where the wind is quite brisk. The isobars close together here. But this area of high pressure is providing, as I say, quite a lot of sunshine. There's a bit of a breeze along some North Sea coast and the western side of Scotland as well. With the breeze coming from the south here, I think parts of northern Scotland may see the highest temperatures today, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius along the Moray Firth. A little cooler further south, particularly along the coasts where we've got that breeze, and some of those North Sea coasts will be on the chilly side too, but generally temperatures getting into the mid-teens for most. Temperatures will drop off a little bit through this evening, quite rapidly under what will be largely clear skies. Just some straggly bits of cloud, just threatening some eastern coasts at times, but generally dry and clear through the evening across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. Further south also we've got those clear skies. Still that noticeable breeze and getting quite gusty across the southwest of England through the day today, particularly in western parts of Devon and Cornwall. Some lively gusts through this evening and overnight. The brisk breeze in the south will help to keep the temperatures up. Just a bit of cloud likely to form over the hills of northern England and eastern Scotland, and again along some coasts perhaps as that easterly breeze continues to bring the cooler winds from the North Sea. Inland, where we've got some shelter, temperatures could again just dip down to freezing. Most towns and cities staying a few degrees above, but certainly a fresh start to Wednesday. But once the sun is up, it's another sparkling day of sunshine to come tomorrow. Just again, the threat of some har on the coast of eastern Scotland. Any early cloud over the hills should disappear. Plenty of blue skies, long sunny spells. Again, feeling cool with a bit of a breeze in the south, but temperatures again for most in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, I'm a bit irritated today. So there's two secret files that have been released, one on Prince Harry and his visa claim and getting citizenship in the USA. And what do we learn from it? Nothing. Nothing, because it's all redacted. And then the biggest one of all, history. So Donald Trump says, yes, we can see the JFK files, we have nothing to hide there, whatever. It's all redacted. There's nothing, we don't learn anything new from this. Now, you've studied, you've been like me, you've been fascinated like this since you were a kid.
Yeah, I have. I don't... I mean, let's be honest, is there likely to be files somewhere that's actually saying Grassy Knoll and Magic Bullet?
Giving you the truth.
And that it was the mafia and that it was to do with J. Edgar Hoover or anything else? I don't believe all that stuff anyway. I honestly don't.
Well, how do you explain that it wasn't JFK's brain that was in the post-mortem? It was a different brain. His brain was substituted.
You know what? That's the first I've heard of that.
Well, you see, I thought
it was a different brain. How did they know? How do they know it wasn't his brain?
Well, they may have known what his brain was like.
Well, the doctor in Dallas, who was there to do the post-mortem because it was his area.
Yes.
Wasn't allowed to do the post-mortem.
That's right, because they wanted to fly him back to Washington, right?
The CIA or the FBI, whatever, took the body away.
Right.
And they had time to do whatever they wanted, and doctor anything the way they wanted. But, I mean, and there definitely were two shooters. There were two shooters involved in this.
I don't believe that.
Because of the magic bullet?
No, the puff of smoke from the grassy knoll.
Maybe I'm being extremely naive that time, but for everything that I've seen, everything I've read, I think that Lee Harvey Oswald, how about this, actually did it.
What?
And did it alone.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 1st of April. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the awful April avalanche has unleashed, and sadly, we're not fooling you. Water and energy bills are up, council and car tax up, MPs' pay up too. Just how will the changes impact you? Get in touch with us throughout the show.
Elsewhere, the Sentencing Council suspends plans for new guidelines amid a mass backlash over the two-tiered justice row. We're asking, should this unelected quango be scrapped altogether?
And Jeffrey Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre claims a traffic incident has left her severely injured and with just 4 days to live. But Australian police describe the incident as a minor crash.
Elsewhere, we're live in Birmingham throughout the afternoon as a major incident is declared in the UK's second city. An estimated 17,000 tonnes of waste remain uncollected across the streets. Bin workers are continuing their strike.
The rubbish is piling high in Britain's second city and there's no sign of it changing. This strike has been going on since March the 11th.
Wow. Now, one of those pictures we showed you of the bins in Birmingham also contained sofas and furniture. Now, I don't know about you, but the bin men don't take that stuff away.
They don't, no.
So that's just fly tipping. There's no excuse for that.
This is
I think there's a mixture of bad behaviour going on here, and of course the impact of these strikes.
But this is the broken windows theory of you know, social cohesion. as soon as one window on the street is broken,
yeah.
Then the sense of community goes. People start dropping litter, crime goes up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how New York cracked down on crime 30 years ago, through making sure even the little things were dealt with, and then things don't spiral. You make sure the street is clean. I mean, if you stand on a train platform and there's a bunch of litter around you, people are more likely to drop litter on that street. Whereas if it's a completely clean train platform, people who might be 50-50 about dropping litter are less likely to. So I think as soon as there's one bin bag on a street, that just attracts even worse behaviour.
I think you're right. And, you know, there are a lot of people who take a lot of care and pride in, for example, their front garden and the way that the frontage of their home looks, whether it's a flat or a house. But if everyone else starts slobbing out and not bothering to repaint that, or not bothering to take the weeds out, or not bothering to worry about rubbish, then you feel a bit like, oh, well, what's the point? What's the point of making mine look nice? I mean, but this is a disgrace. I mean, what do you think? Do these bin strikers, do they deserve to strike over all of this?
The council is bust.
Yeah, I mean, there's no money.
There is literally no money, and they're asking for pay rises?
Yeah.
I mean, they're asking for job protection that no one else employed by Birmingham Council can, frankly, have, because there is no money. Because the council was so poorly run, because it was run into the ground, because there was this bonkers equal pay case that meant that bin men had to be paid exactly the same as cleaning staff and vice versa. I mean, it is complete, utter
look at that. There's an animal.
nonsense.
There's animals just in the rubbish, and then that's going to go into someone's home, and it's going to have God knows what all over it. But yeah, I guess the brutal thing would be for the council to just say, you know what, we'll find some other people who are willing to work for this price, for this salary, and we'll just get rid of you. Just sack the lot. Would that be too harsh? Let us know if you have sympathy for the bin collectors. You know, it's quite a tough job, isn't it?
It is.
Getting up at the crack of dawn and picking up other people's
rubbish. Well, that's
rubbish.
why they used to be paid more than the paper pushers, and now they have to be paid exactly the same. Nonsense.
Yeah. Well, let us know. GBNews.com. Perhaps you live in Birmingham yourself and are having to suffer through all of this. But after your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. Your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Millions of households across the country will see their bills increase today, from energy and water prices to council tax and stamp duty. The 7 hikes in prices and tax coincide with the new financial year in what's being dubbed Awful April for consumers. Water bills are increasing by an average of £10 a month in England and Wales, while gas and electricity are up by £111 a year. Also today, the basic salary for members of Parliament is increased by 2.8%. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister visited the City of London this morning as the annual increases to the National Living Wage and the National Minimum Wage take effect today. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
It all feels like it's coming at once. This is a difficult April for so many people, and where the government has real cause, such as the national insurance jobs tax, which is cascading through the economy in the way that we said 7 months ago, that's the area that the government has the most ability to change things even at this late stage.
The cost of living is already unbearable. That's what Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said this morning during a press conference with the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. The press conference comes as the Conservatives accuse Labour of introducing a jobs tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves increased the national insurance for employers in her budget last year, which comes into force on the 6th of April. Employers' national insurance contributions will increase from 13.8% to 15%. Elsewhere, Downing Street has said this lunchtime that the UK is at an advanced stage in talks with the US, as President Donald Trump is set to introduce an array of tariffs tomorrow. Number 10 said they have made good progress in the talks and that all options are on the table. adding, quote, "We retain the right to respond and protect our industries." US President Donald Trump said last night he is settled on a tariff plan and that the US will be nice. In a new development, Sir Keir Starmer has been warned that there can be no free trade without free speech, as the US State Department issued a statement saying it was concerned about freedom of expression in the United Kingdom. President Trump's tariffs, including a 25% tariff on all automotive imports, are set to come into effect on his so-called Liberation Day tomorrow.
2 days, which is maybe tomorrow night or probably Wednesday, you're going to see, and they're reciprocal. So whatever they charge us, we charge them, but we're being nicer than they were. We have a lot of countries, friend and foe. I always say friend and foe, but the friend in many cases is worse than the foe. They took advantage of us, and we are going to be very nice by comparison to what they were. The numbers will be lower than what they've been charging us, and in some cases maybe substantially lower, but we sort of have a world obligation perhaps. But we're going to be very nice.
Plans for new sentencing guidelines for offenders from minorities have now been delayed after the government announced draft legislation to block the changes. The new guidelines issued by the Sentencing Council says judges should get a pre-sentence report before sentencing someone of an ethnic, cultural or faith minority, alongside other groups such as those aged 18 to 25, women and pregnant women. That guidance had been due to come into effect today, but Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced she would introduce a draft law to the Commons aimed at blocking the guidelines on the same date. The Independent Sentencing Council insisted the new instructions were necessary and appropriate, but would not be implemented while the introduction of a bill was imminent. 3 people have died and 3 people have been taken to hospital following a crash near Heathrow Airport in West London. The London Ambulance Service said they were called at 5 minutes to midnight last night to reports of a road traffic collision on Bedford Road in Feltham. Crews treated 6 people and sadly 3 people were declared dead at the scene. 3 patients were taken to hospital. Ambulance crews, members of the Hazardous Area Response Team and London's Air Ambulance all attended. And Birmingham City Council has declared a major incident to address the impact of the ongoing bin strike, as it estimates 17,000 tonnes of waste remain uncollected around the city. Members of the Unite Union in Birmingham are holding an all-out strike, which has led to rubbish piling up in the streets. The council says daily blocking of its depots by pickets has meant workers cannot get their vehicles out to collect the waste. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 1 and the awful April avalanche is unleashed. And sadly, we're not fooling you because, as you probably know, water and energy bills...
Up.
Council and car tax?
Up again.
Stamp duty and broadband.
You guessed it, up.
Well, I think it's time to take a closer look at some of these numbers.
I think so.
Because, of course, these numbers have been big and red. So let's show you them in a big and red way. There was the number. It was 4.99%. That was on council tax, of course. But energy is also significantly up. £111 increase per year. The average energy bill up to almost 2,000 quid a year. But it's not just energy, of course. Car tax is also something. Oh, and stamp duty. Stamp duty is up, up, up. Properties over £125,000 for the first-time buyer. That's come down from £250,000. That threshold coming in much lower than before. Let's have a look at that car tax now. Here it is. It's gone from, look at this. Look at this, £5 to £195. That kind of rise is astonishing. Electric cars also no longer tax exempt. Let's take a look at water. Water is one of those big risers too. £10 extra per month. That's the average increase. That's £120 more every single year just to keep the same amount of water. Broadband now, And here we go. Providers must tell customers in pounds and pence about these increases. It's hard to calculate. Different providers, of course, providing different amounts for their broadband. But the one thing that is true, across the board, it's going up.
Well, it's not a pretty picture that you paint there, Tom. Pretty depressing across the board. Energy bills, water, broadband, your telephone, everything. Everything. Probably even your Netflix is going up.
You can tell it's really bad because there's a big red arrow and it's pointing in the wrong direction.
I mean, we were speaking to a consumer journalist earlier, really good one, Harry Wallop, and he was saying, wasn't he, that the only thing you can really do, apart from, I guess, trying to earn some more money, try and pay for all of this stuff, is to shop around.
Yeah.
Is to shop around, and apparently there are some better offers. I mean, you can sometimes get stuck on a tariff and then you realise that you're absolutely being ripped off to high heaven.
Yeah, but
so that's the only hope, really.
When it comes to your energy, when it comes to your broadband, when it comes to your mobile phone, shopping around, or even threatening to leave.
Oh, yes.
And then not actually leaving, you'll very often be offered a better deal that they don't advertise.
Have you done that before?
I have done that.
On your mobile phone?
On my mobile phone, yeah.
People do that. I've never actually done it, I don't think. Actually, maybe I have. But you never know how far to push it.
Well,
because at some point they say, OK, fine, we'll let you go.
Well, you say you find a real deal that's better, and you'll likely be able to stay on your current provider, and they will match that deal because they don't want to lose you as a customer. That is almost always happening.
So if you're paying £40 per month, let's say, and then you find someone who's offering £30 a month, you just say to your £40 a month guys, I can get £30, and then they'll
and I'm going to
honour
leave
that.
It. And they will haggle. They will haggle.
Well, there you go. They might chuck in some free data as well.
Well, of course, it's a difficult time for people across the country, even if you do haggle for your phone bill. Let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, you've been speaking to the leader of His Majesty's most loyal opposition.
Yes, a depressing list of bills going up there, Tom and Emily, and more to come this weekend with this 1.2% increase in national insurance for employers. Now, the Tories have been saying this lunchtime that is Labour's jobs tax. They've done some calculations. That's worth £3,500 worse off for us all by 2030 because many think that this increase in the employer's share of the national insurance charge we all pay as employees of companies will be passed on to employees over the coming years. That's why they're saying £3,500 worse off by the next election. On top of all those changes you've announced there, a big worry. And of course, later today, we're hearing from Donald Trump live on GBNews around 5 o'clock with an update on the tariffs. Now, the UK is bracing itself for the US to impose tariffs on the UK like other countries. This lunchtime, we're told by Number 10 they're in advanced stages about a limited form of maybe a carve-out from some of these measures, but we think will be hit by them. Earlier today, I asked Kemi Badenoch, she, of course, would like to be Prime Minister at the next election. I asked her how she would treat Donald Trump, and in fact, is there a ban on criticising the US President in her own party? And here's what she told us earlier.
Thank you. Kemi Badenoch, today's a big day in the world of Donald Trump. We're going to be seeing tariffs imposed probably on the UK later today. What would be your approach to that? Would you impose tariffs back on the US? And why have you reportedly told your MPs they can't criticise the US President?
I haven't told my MPs that they can't say that, so that's just false. But on the point of trade tariffs, we should not be engaging in a trade war or tit-for-tat retaliation. That makes everybody poorer. What I would do is what I said, my very first Prime Minister's questions, that we need a UK-US trade deal ASAP. This was something that we were, well on the way to negotiating the last time President Trump was in government. President Biden did not want to negotiate any free trade agreements with any country, so we had to pause that. You need a willing partner for trade agreements. But now is the time for us to kickstart that and move at speed. And it has to be something that delivers for those critical sectors. It can't just be something that looks at AI and tech. What are we doing for our car manufacturers, for example? When I was business secretary, we spent a lot of money investing in the car industry. We had people who were creating jobs. Stellantis, for example, now cutting jobs. If those tariffs come into place, let's look at the £8 billion of exports that UK manufacturers, car manufacturers sell to the US. We're not going to get that amount of money, which means that the tax take will reduce. That's a problem for the Chancellor because she's going to have to look elsewhere for the taxes. So this needs to be solved as soon as possible. It is not something that can be ignored.
Kemi Badenoch there, the Tory leader. Now, in later questions, she said she would support the government's position of keeping a calm head, trying to work out a way around these tariffs rather than whacking back with our own charges on US products later this week. So all to play for. And these tariffs will throw the government's numbers announced only last week at the spring statement out the window. The government says this lunchtime, by the way, on cost of living, that they do say 3 million people are getting a pay rise on the minimum wage. Those who are pensioners, the state pension goes up by £475. And they claim that 190,000 jobs have been created since the start of the Parliament. I should say, by the way, later on today at 2 o'clock on your show, we're running a full interview with Kemi Badenoch. I asked her about policing social media and the issue of adolescence, should we write, and policy on the back of fictional TV shows, and also the issue of Eid versus Easter. Why are we so loath to mark Easter in this country? Stay tuned.
Oh, sounds juicy. Sounds very interesting, Christopher. Well, stay tuned. Well, we'll be here, obviously. Yes, but people should stay tuned for that interview coming up at 2 o'clock. Thank you, Christopher. Hope I will speak to you a bit later. Apparently, there's outrage that Kemi Badenoch hasn't watched the 4-part series, Adolescence. Why should she? It's just a drama. If you want to watch it, watch it. If you don't, don't. Or should she?
I watched it.
I watched it too, although I did fall asleep in one of the episodes.
Oh, no. Was it the fourth? The fourth one was slower.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It was all quite slow. I did enjoy it, though. I mean, do you care if the Leader of the Opposition has watched Adolescence? I mean, it's a bit strange that Keir Starmer is sort of fawning over the creators of this ITV series as if it should dictate policy somehow.
I think the funniest thing is that they've made it available in classrooms to show children it during school time. And yet, if you've watched the show, there's a part of it in the second episode where they ruthlessly take the mick out of a terrible teacher who turns up late, who's scruffy, who runs into the class and then sticks on a video for his class.
Oh.
Do you remember? This is how the show depicts a really terrible, awful teacher. And now the government's saying, oh, we should just show children TV in schools, as if that's a good way to teach. Even the show acknowledges that's a terrible way to teach.
Also, Kemi Badenoch said, you know, this isn't the biggest issue that's facing the country. I mean, Islamic extremism, for example, is a more important, significant form of radicalisation in this country than, you know, a random little scrawny boy suddenly becoming an incel. Anyway, let us know your thoughts.
We're going to turn back to the cost of living now because we're delighted to be joined by the personal finance expert, Director of Advice Services at Debt Free Advice, Matt Dronfield. Matt, thanks for being with us. I mean, a lot of people will be looking at the numbers, the bills going up today and thinking, how on earth do I manage? Just across the board, what's the best advice you got?
So as you say, so we're so concerned because we're already supporting so many people that can't afford to heat their homes or feed their families. And you've been mentioning in the prelude there, today really is the start of awful April where things are going to get harder. Half of our clients already owe council tax, and cuts to disability benefits in the spring statement could take £30 a month from people who need care or help to live independently. It's really painting a bleak picture. You went through there on your screen about the so many different prices that are going up. Some help out there. One of the key ones that many people don't know about is social tariffs for your broadband and phone. So if you're in receipt of benefits, speak to your provider and see if they have something called a social tariff, which is discounted rates for those that might find it more challenging to keep up with those payments. That's a great top tip that not many people know about.
That's a really good tip. Yes, so social tariffs, you can find out about those and that'll give you a discount. Matt, in terms of debt, there'll be a lot of people worrying that they're going to get into a lot of debt as a result of these bills going up. I mean, it may be that your rent has already gone up or your mortgage has gone up. You're already struggling with that. And then all of these smaller bills going up quite considerably as well at the same time. I mean, how do people avoid getting into that awful cycle of debt?
Yeah, you're right. So many people are either worried about going into debt or already in debt, and yet we don't speak about our personal finances. And we did a survey last year. You're more likely to tell your pet than your partner or loved one about your own financial position.
Yeah.
So anyone out here that's kind of listening and watching today, to know that there are free, expert, independent advisors that can help guide you through that process. Debt Free Advice is a coalition of charities that have been working together for 19 years. And in that time, we've supported over 400,000 people navigate what is a really tricky situation. The numbers that Tom showed earlier is only going to increase those people looking for somewhere to turn. never go on kind of a Google search and just find the top one that goes to, because often they'll charge you to negotiate with your creditors. There are so many charities out there that are funded by government to act on your behalf. What they'll do is they'll go through your income and expenditure and see the totality of your debts. And with your consent, they will negotiate directly with your creditors to put that in order. Starting off with priority debts, they're the debts that you could lose your housing or your vehicle if you need that to get to work, and then working through in the correct order as to what pay off, while still leaving you enough to live on. Because let's be honest, you need a quality of life after you've paid all your bills and your commitments.
Yeah, no, such important advice there. Matt Johnfield, thanks so much for joining us and talking through some of that, because I know a lot of people in this country, almost all of us, will be looking at those bills today. We're looking at those numbers, those big red arrows, and just thinking, yikes.
And banks will lend, and they will up your credit limit even when you don't feel as though you can afford it. And then the cycle of sort of switching from credit card to credit card, going from 0% transfers and whatever it is, finding yourself in a deep hole. And it's a source of shame.
As soon as you miss a payment, then that money gets worse and you need to pay more. Oh,
it is a source of shame, but I do think people should be more open about it, even if it is a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because I think more people are in debt than you'd think.
Yeah.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GBNews. Sorry, that was a bit depressing.
Well, we're going to move.
Things are going to get rosier.
We're going to move on from talking about too much debt to talk about how rich some of the people that work in our local councils are. So there's a positive news story. Yes, the Taxpayers Alliance Town Hall Rich List has made some shocking discoveries. More on that after this.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1. Now, the Taxpayers Alliance Town Hall Rich List has found that in 2023 to 24, at least 3,906 council employees earned more than £100,000. Well, that's 26% more compared to the previous year.
Wow. OK, well, the Taxpayers Alliance said this is the largest number of people earning at least £100,000 or £150,000 since the Town Hall Rich List began in 2007. There are a huge number of people working in councils who earn more than the Prime Minister.
Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of the Taxpayers Alliance, John O'Connell. John, just how expensive have things got?
Afternoon, Tom. Hi, Emily. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's close to 4,000 employees at local authorities who are in receipt of remuneration of £100,000 or more. And this obviously is coming at a time when council tax is about to go up by 5% for most, and in some cases up by 10%. Council tax on second homes has gone up by 100%. And at the same time, people are possibly feeling like their bins are collected less frequently than they used to be. There are potholes still scarring their local roads. And there's an important conversation to be had about value for money here, about whether people are in receipt of quite large salaries, doing quite important jobs, it has to be said, and whether they're actually delivering value for council taxpayers' money.
Between total remuneration packages, which include things like pensions and bonuses, as well as the salary, and the salaries alone. Now, if you take the salaries alone, there are still hundreds, am I right, of people working in councils who earn more than the Prime Minister, who's on, what, 170 odd?
Yeah, there'd be thousands, in fact. But I think it goes to show that, yes, council bosses are in charge of very large budgets, but they don't have the same competitive pressures of the private sector. They're given grants year after year, and they deliver very, very important services. It's absolutely right to make that properly clear. And lots of council budgets nowadays are geared towards adult social services too. So in terms of cutting back on waste, sometimes there's less wiggle room than people might expect. Having said that, we've got councils like Colchester who are withdrawing park maintenance budgets. We've got Ealing who are closing children's centres. So there are councils that are really deciding they're needing to pare back on frontline services that people expect when they hand over those big bills at the end of every month that are actually going up this month.
Now, you've looked at, of course, all the councils across the country, and the number one council for the most number of people who are paid a six-figure salary, it's Westminster.
It is, on 73, Westminster Council. And we've seen recently, to be fair, Westminster is traditionally a pretty well-run council, low council tax compared to the rest of the country. A lot of that's got to do with the fact that it's got quite a lot of prominent businesses in the area and things like that. That said, we've seen recently, of course, that Westminster Council have been issuing guidance on quiet nights out and, really putting the screws on areas like Soho, which are, sort of the life and soul of central London. So, again, maybe people who are visiting the area might be wondering why those on such high salaries are sending out such strange edicts for a place that's supposed to be the lifeblood of the country.
Absolutely. It doesn't make sense to me. John O'Connell, thank you very much indeed from the Taxpayers Alliance. Some of these stats are crazy. 3,906 council employees. Over 100,000.
And 73 of them at one... I didn't realise that a council needed more than 73 employees. Why 73 at the Westminster Council on six figures?
262, more than 200,000 in total remuneration. Good jobs if you can get them. I wonder whether council workers should be earning more than the Prime Minister. Surely his is the biggest job, the most responsibility when it comes to this sort of thing.
Although the Prime Minister does earn less than sort of equivalent G7 leaders. So maybe we don't pay the Prime Minister enough.
Maybe we pay council workers too much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, talking about councils, let's move to Birmingham because they're increasing their council tax, but they're also declaring a major incident to deal with all of these bins that are taking over the streets.
Yes, it's all because members of the Unite Union are holding an all-out strike after the scrapping of waste collection and recycling officer roles.
Yes, the major incidents will now focus on stepping up cleaning and clearing that backlog.
So our reporter Steve Bennett joins us from Birmingham on the site and at the smell of the scene. Steve, what's it like?
Yes, hello to you both. The smell is getting worse, I can confirm that. We've been here for most of the morning, and as the day's going on, as the sun's coming out, the pile behind me, which is one of many piles up and down this residential street, it's just getting worse and worse smelling. We've seen lorries drive over the corner of this pile, splitting the rubbish bags. We've seen dog walkers, they've been coming past here, and the dogs have actually been eating this rubbish as well. So it really is becoming a real issue, a real health hazard issue for the locals. And we spoke to some of those locals on this road earlier on, and here's what they had to say about it.
Oh, it's awful. It's disgusting. It's horrible to just, when I'm walking the dog, there's so much rubbish on the floor, and it's just really put a horrible vibe on the whole city.
They need to get around the table and talk.
And what are you doing with your rubbish?
Well, stacking on the end of the road. All our bins are full now. We haven't destroyed it in the house. We've just had a council tax rise. I mean, why should we pay that when we're not getting a job done?
Becoming a mountain now. There's also piles of bins just piling up on the street corners. And it's becoming a mountain of rubbish now, and they have to do something.
And 17,000 tonnes of rubbish are on the Birmingham streets as we speak, and it's 900 tonnes of it gets added a day. So it's just going up and up. And by declaring a major incident, Birmingham City Council can now seek the assistance of local boroughs, local authorities and government as well to try and help clear this mess. But as you rightly said, there's so much of it on the streets that the backlog will take a while to get through. So really is a concerning time for these residents, many of whom signed a petition back in March asking Birmingham City Council to take action swiftly, which, as you can see, has not yet been done.
No, it's just, what a sight, what a sight. Well, Steve, thanks for being there for us. Thanks for showing us, frankly, what a terrible sort of state of affairs people in Birmingham are having to suffer right
Yeah,
now.
I'm happy I don't live on those streets right now. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Yes, we're going to be live in New York as Sir Keir Starmer's trade hopes with the United States. People are thinking they could be at risk over free speech concerns. That's after the headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Millions of households across the country will see their bills increase today, from energy and water prices to council tax and stamp duty. The 7 hikes in prices and tax coincide with the new financial year in what's being dubbed Awful April for consumers. Water bills are increasing by an average of £10 a month in England and Wales, while gas and electricity are up by £111 a year. Also today, the basic salary for members of Parliament has increased by 2.8%. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister visited the City of London this morning as the annual increases to the National Living Wage and National Minimum Wage also take effect today. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
It all feels like it's coming at once. This is a difficult April for so many people, and where the government has real cause, such as the national insurance jobs tax, which is cascading through the economy in the way that we said 7 months ago, that's the area that the government has the most ability to change things even at this late stage.
The cost of living is already unbearable. That's what Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said this morning during a press conference with Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer Mel Stride. The press conference comes as the Conservatives accuse Labour of introducing a jobs tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves increased the national insurance for employers in her budget last year, which comes into force on the 6th of April. Employers' national insurance contributions will increase from 13.8% to 15%. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said that the UK must prepare for the worst, as President Donald Trump is set to introduce an array of tariffs tomorrow. Downing Street has said this lunchtime that the UK is at an advanced stage in talks with the US, adding that good progress has been made and that all options are on the table, adding we retain the right to respond and protect our industries. US President Trump said last night he has settled on a tariff plan and that the US will be nice. In a new development, Sir Keir Starmer has been warned that there can be no free trade without free speech, as the US State Department issued a statement saying it was concerned about freedom of expression in the United Kingdom. President Trump's tariffs, including a 25% tariff on all automotive imports, are set to come into effect on his so-called Liberation Day tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2898 and €1.1955. The price of gold is £2,428.98 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,642 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. On the M8 in Glasgow, there's a lane closed on the westbound exit at junction 20 where a lorry's broken down. Buses replaced trains between Cleethorpes and Barton on Humber because of a faulty train. In Derbyshire, the A628 Woodhead Pass is closed each way between Flouch and Glossop after an accident causing queues. In Cheshire, the A51 is closed each way along Tarvin Road at Bolton in Chester for an investigation with delays towards there. And as you divert, on the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed southbound with a shed load of gravel between junctions 5 and 4A towards the M42 near Birmingham, taking 40 minutes in queues from junction 7. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Anna, let's have a look at this and how do we tackle the work of one of Britain's most infamous white supremacists?
Yes.
William Shakespeare.
Oh no. That William Shakespeare, yes.
Why is he being? Why are some people saying he's a white supremacist?
So this seems to mostly be based on some research that was carried out in 2022 by some academics that concluded that essentially promoting Shakespeare, as they said, benefits the ideology of white European supremacy because the argument is that effectively you're saying that this kind of culture is superior to others. But, you know, I'm afraid most people who read Shakespeare will conclude that it is superior to most things that are written. And that's nothing to do with him being white. That's just to do with him being a genius. And it's very depressing seeing this, but also the amount of time, effort and presumably funding is spent on these sort of projects. It actually, I think, does a disservice to the youth, to young people, because by effectively erasing or trying to rewrite history, they then don't actually learn about the struggles people have gone through. So it's a bizarre one.
But I find it astonishing because this is Birmingham University that's done this study, or an academic from Birmingham University. Birmingham should be celebrating everything great about the Midlands. It should be biased. If Birmingham and Stratford itself cannot celebrate what makes Stratford and Birmingham great, because celebrating a successful British writer from centuries ago reduces the visibility of writers from other countries that had nothing to do with us in the first place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 20 minutes to 2, some breaking news for you now. Reports are that Donald Trump has signed off Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal. The agreement with the Mauritian government is now being finalised, having reportedly been approved by the US president.
Yeah, so it looks like we're one step closer to giving away sovereignty of the islands. But Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, is here to tell us more. Catherine, this is big news.
Well, yes, indeed. So the Prime Minister's official spokesman has said that this deal is now between us and the Mauritian government to finalise the deal following the discussions with the United States. When picked up on those discussions and if it would have to go back to the US for approval, he said, well, you've heard that the President recognises the strength of the deal. Now, cast your mind back just a few weeks to Trump and the Prime Minister meeting in the Oval Office. There was talk about there'd been a lot of anticipation that the Republicans would not go along with it, that they would veto it. And many people were very surprised when Trump said, we think it sounds like a good deal. We're probably going to go along with you on that. Now, to be honest, at the time, it sounded to me like I wasn't completely sure whether Donald Trump knew all the ins and outs of it. That sounded like a holding position. But based on what we've been told by Number 10 today, it does sound like now it's in the final stages of being negotiated with Mauritius. Of course, it was negotiated, then they got a different leader, then it had to be renegotiated. So, yes, let's see. But big news, and of course many people will be very unhappy because we're going to be paying millions and millions for 99 years to use Diego Garcia, a naval base, along with America, on an island that we are giving away to Mauritius. So we're giving something away and then we're going to pay a lot of money for the privilege of continuing to use a naval base there.
Catherine, it's easy enough for Donald Trump to say he's fine with it. Yeah. He's not the one losing territory, and he's not the one paying billions of pounds for the privilege. To all intents and purposes, everything stays the same for the Americans. They still get to use this base, and they don't have to pay any more for it. It's Britain that's going to have to be paying. It's Britain that loses some of our most strategically important territory in the world. It's Britain, and I know this point is a bit esoteric, but it's Britain who, for the first time in hundreds of years, will now not have a presence in the Indian Ocean, which means that there will be a time of day when British territory is all in darkness, where sunlight does not touch a corner of British territory. I mean, that is a knock to the country's standing, to our status, to our sense of self.
Well, yes, indeed. And there's been a lot of criticism of the Attorney General, Richard Hermer, that his fingerprints are all over this and that basically his lawyerly instincts have been to play it super, super, super safe, where previous Conservative governments have sort of taken a look at it and kicked it into the long grass. But it may be, I mean, Nigel Farage was convinced that Donald Trump would not OK this deal. I think he was very taken aback, as were many, when Donald Trump made sort of positive noises about it. But it might just be that Donald Trump's focus is elsewhere. Donald Trump's focus, let's face it, is on America first. Donald Trump's focus is on Greenland, which he says he has to have and doesn't rule out sending troops into. His focus is on Canada, which he says he wants to become the 51st state. So it may be very, very important to us. It seems like it's not quite so important to America.
Yes, perhaps there was naivety among many of our politicians and also commentariat to suggest that, Donald Trump would come to save us from this deal that seems to be so costly and negative for our country and its standing. Perhaps this will change the relationship with Donald Trump going forward from some of his fans in this country.
Well, I don't know. Donald Trump has done a lot of things recently that perhaps were not expected. But I do think the point stands that, we talk about this special relationship all the time, don't we? But I think that the special relationship is much more special to the United Kingdom than it is to the United States. Because, look, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance have criticised free speech, have been quite critical of us in various respects. We are going out of our way not to criticise anything that they are doing. We haven't criticised Trump on saying that he'd like to annex Greenland, that he wants Canada. The government just doesn't want to do anything to upset them. They don't really have the same attitude because, let's face it, they don't need to. It's the richest country in the world. He is the most powerful man in the world. We are not equally powerful in this.
But the utterly baffling thing here, Catherine, is that we have expended political and diplomatic capital in getting the Americans to agree with our government's position, We've sent over our chief negotiator on the Chagos Islands deal, the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell. He's gone, of course he's gone to Mauritius to talk with them, but he's also gone to Washington, D.C. to speak with the Americans. He accompanied Keir Starmer on his trip. He's been whizzing around the world trying to convince the Americans to let us give away the Chagos Islands. I mean, we have been expending political capital and valuable time negotiating with the Americans to allow this bonkers deal to go ahead. That was time and political and diplomatic capital that could have been spent on avoiding tariffs, for instance, on pursuing deeper trade. And yet we've been talking about allowing the Americans allowing us to give away our islands.
Well, yes, this is a row that's been rumbling on about the Chagos Island for at least 6 months. I think I asked the Prime Minister about it back in October, whether he could guarantee not to give any other British overseas territories away. He didn't guarantee it, and that sort of set the cat among the pigeons for a few days. So, yes, that was before Donald Trump even came to office. But look, you know, the tariffs, we won't have long till we find out, probably about 8 o'clock tomorrow, Liberation Day for America. Yeah. Pretty bad news for us and many, many other countries around the globe. Donald Trump saying that he's going to be nice, but I don't think that many people will be seeing tariffs in that way.
Well, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, with that breaking news that Donald Trump has signed off on Keir Starmer's Chagos deal. What do you make of that at home? I wonder. I mean, fundamentally, this is Keir Starmer's deal, but it is a bit of a blow, is it not, that our ally Donald Trump has decided... People thought that he was going to come in and save the day.
Which was a bit pathetic, really.
Yeah.
Oh, please save us, Donald.
That's what we thought.
As if we didn't have any sort of agency ourselves. But it seems like the agency that we did have was persuading Donald Trump to allow us to perform this act of self-harm. I mean, it is extraordinary.
Well, I think we're going to get some more reaction on this, don't you? Yep, absolutely. But let's get the travel weather next.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're heading further afield over the next few days, it is going to be unsettled across much of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece, where very lively showers and thunderstorms will continue during Wednesday. Showery for southern Italy, but northern Italy largely fine with some sunshine. South of France into Spain and Portugal. We've got spells of rain moving in along with a gusty wind, and that unsettled weather sticks around for the end of the week, whilst the showers become fewer and less frequent in Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Blue skies pretty much all the way today. Temperatures, well, varying quite a bit across the country. Some chilliness on the coasts and across the south where the wind is quite brisk. The isobars close together here. But this area of high pressure is providing, as I say, quite a lot of sunshine. There's a bit of a breeze along some North Sea coast and the western side of Scotland as well. With the breeze coming from the south here, I think parts of northern Scotland may see the highest temperatures today, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius along the Moray Firth. A little cooler further south, particularly along the coasts where we've got that breeze, and some of those North Sea coasts will be on the chilly side too, but generally temperatures getting into the mid-teens for most. Temperatures will drop off a little bit through this evening, quite rapidly under what will be largely clear skies. Just some straggly bits of cloud, just threatening some eastern coasts at times, but generally dry and clear through the evening across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. Further south also we've got those clear skies. Still that noticeable breeze and getting quite gusty across the southwest of England through the day today, particularly in western parts of Devon and Cornwall. Some lively gusts through this evening and overnight. The brisk breeze in the south will help to keep the temperatures up. Just a bit of cloud likely to form over the hills of northern England and eastern Scotland, and again along some coasts perhaps as that easterly breeze continues to bring the cooler winds from the North Sea. Inland, where we've got some shelter, temperatures could again just dip down to freezing. Most towns and cities staying a few degrees above, but certainly a fresh start to Wednesday. But once the sun is up, It's another sparkling day of sunshine to come tomorrow. Just again, the threat of some har on the coast of eastern Scotland. Any early cloud over the hills should disappear. Plenty of blue skies, long sunny spells. Again, feeling cool with a bit of a breeze in the south, but temperatures again for most in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
When judges need more information about an offender's personal circumstances. It will remain the case, for example, that where an offender...
Good afternoon, Britain. Shabana Mahmood is speaking in the House of Commons about the sentencing guidelines. Let's listen in.
But it does prohibit the Council from making guidelines about pre-sentence reports with specific reference to the offender's personal characteristics, such as their race, religion or belief or cultural background. The bill will not affect the court's existing duties to obtain a pre-sentence report in appropriate cases, nor does it change court precedent around them, like the recent case of Thompson, in which the Court of Appeal noted the importance of obtaining a pre-sentence report in cases involving pregnant women or women who have recently given birth. Or the case of Meanley, where the court referred to the importance of pre-sentence reports in serious cases involving young defendants, or Kermakaj, where the court emphasised the defendant's traumatic upbringing, vulnerability and the fact that they had been a victim of modern slavery, as reasons why a pre-sentence report should be ordered. Judges will continue to request pre-sentence reports in cases where they ordinarily would, for example, those involving pregnant women and young people. I accept that this bill will, however, raise wider questions about the role of the Sentencing Council. The Council does important work bringing greater consistency to judicial decision-making. But we are here today discussing a question of policy, a difficult, disputed and uncertain one at that. If the government cannot determine national policy on the question of equality of treatment before the law, then we have uncovered a democratic deficit. Today's legislation exposes that question, but it does not address it. The proper role of the Sentencing Council and the process for making guidelines of this type must be considered further. I will do so in the coming months. It is right that this question is considered in greater depth, and should further legislation be required, I shall propose it as part of the upcoming sentencing bill. Hear, hear. The Sentencing Council, while only 15 years old, holds an important position within the firmament of our justice system, and any changes must be made carefully and with due consideration. I am sure they will be discussed more in this House in the months ahead. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government will today introduce the Sentencing Guidelines Pre-Sentence Reports Bill. The issue it contains are of great consequence because the path to a more equal society can only be paved by equality before the law. Again, I thank the Sentencing Council for putting a pause on their guidelines whilst Parliament has its say. I believe that we must reverse them and reassert that no race or religion should receive preferential treatment before the law, and the bill we will introduce today will achieve that. And I commend this statement to the House.
Yeah. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Lord Chancellor must be living in a parallel universe if she's giving herself a pat on the back today. The truth is that she's completely lost control of the justice system. She sat on her hands for weeks. She took 7 days to gather her thoughts and put her views in writing to the Sentencing Council. Her incompetence took this down to the wire. Magistrates and judges were only updated by the press office of the Sentencing Council at midday today that the guidelines they were due to come into force had in effect been suspended. That raises the very real prospect that magistrates and judges sitting from 10 a.m. this morning were unaware of this chaotic last-minute change and did sentence people under guidelines that the Justice Secretary herself has conceded are two-tier. But it gets worse. In that very email to thousands of judges and magistrates sent just 90 minutes ago, the Sentencing Council state, and I quote, "We remain of the view that the guidelines are necessary and appropriate." Confusion reigns. They're being told one thing by the Lord Chancellor and another by the Sentencing Council. Who really is in charge here? Yet again, the Justice Secretary has been humiliated and undermined by activist judges seeking to undermine the will of this place, our Parliament. Her authority has been shredded. She is being treated as a two-tier, second-tier Justice Secretary. Madam Deputy Speaker, this was entirely preventable if the Justice Secretary had simply put party politics to one side and just backed our bill weeks ago to restore accountability and empower her to actually control justice policy. But the Labour Party blocked it. If the Prime Minister has been tricked into sitting at the front of the Docklands Light Railway thinking that he's in charge, as his Chief of Staff mocked him for the other day, the Lord Chancellor has chosen to sit there in the passenger seat, allowing the judiciary to take charge. She's decided to be undecided. She's resolved to be irresolute, all-powerful to be impotent. Even after this complete shambles, she won't even re-establish ministerial oversight. We're told via frantic press briefings that her bill, which we haven't even seen yet, will surgically remove this two-tier sentencing guidelines. But this doesn't tackle the root cause of the problem at all, which is a legal quango that is activist, which holds views completely divergent to the public, to Parliament, and now we're told to the government. Unless she follows the formula of our bill, MPs on this side produced will be back here time and again to unwind the next piece of madness coming out of the Council. Take the Sentencing Council's immigration guidelines that water down sentences for immigration offences below the 12-month threshold for automatic deportation. If published, it will mean hundreds of illegal migrants and foreign national offenders will avoid deportation every single year. It will blow a hole in border security. It even waters down the maximum life sentence for people smugglers legislated for just under a year ago. It completely disregards parliamentary sovereignty. At our last exchange, the Justice Secretary said there would be no two-tier justice on her watch. Well, there it is. And it is worse than that. On the 2nd of January, her own department, not the Sentencing Council, her own department published guidance ordering the prioritisation of bail for ethnic minorities and transgender people, continuing a practice introduced under Gordon Brown. And contrary to the misinformation peddled by her press office, it produced new guidance on pre-sentencing reports that have been forced for months, which state probation officers should consider the culture of an offender and whether they have suffered, and I quote, intergenerational trauma from historical events. Well, this is cultural relativism, which violates the rule of law and puts the British public at risk. And this time, nobody is to blame other than her. It's her department, it's black and white, it is two-tier justice. So I have some questions. Can she give the House the reassurance that nobody was sentenced this morning under guidelines that she concedes are two-tier? After he has brought the Sentencing Council into total disrepute, can she honestly say at the dispatch box that she has confidence in the head of the Sentencing Council, Lord Justice Davis? Yes or no? And if she does, is she aware that yesterday he took to the airways in an astonishing departure from the expected standards of judicial conduct to advocate for abolishing short sentences, especially for hyper-prolific offenders, effectively instructing lower courts to follow suit? It's time for him to go, and if she won't sack him for this, what would it take? Does she have confidence in Joanna Robinson, another member of the Sentencing Council, who took a moral objection to border control and described the Illegal Immigration Act as appalling? And lastly, will she change the guidance which her own department is producing, which has created a two-tier probation service? Or is it, once again, on her watch, two-tier justice under two-tier care?
Dear me, Madam Deputy Speaker, it seems that the honourable gentleman's case of amnesia is as bad as ever. 14 whole years appear to have disappeared from his memory entirely. He talks about parliamentary sovereignty, appears never to have known when his own party was in government, when he was a Secretary of State and a Minister, what on earth parliamentary sovereignty is and how to exercise power. I think he's rather distressed that, in fact, my approach has led to a pause in these guidelines, and that I have brought forward a bill that will deal with the offending bit of this guideline, and that I'm going to consider the wider role and powers of the Sentencing Council ahead of the sentencing bill later this year. I understand it must be very disappointing for him that he has been exposed as someone who is all talk, no action, and I get the job done, Madam Deputy Speaker. I can see that it's annoying him greatly. Perhaps he would like to begin, as I often invite him to do so when we have our exchanges across this dispatch box, to apologise for the country, because after 14 years he appears to have never discovered anything of which he now discusses regularly from his position on the opposition benches. He did nothing about those matters when he was a member of the government that actually ran this country. Perhaps that's the problem. They didn't really run this country. They gave up on the job. He never rolled up his sleeves and put in the hard work to get the job done. That's why we inherited prisons on the brink of collapse, and that's why I'm now unwinding all of the mistakes that his party made and the guidance that they welcomed. The guidance that he and his party welcomed. He didn't tell me what discussions he's had with the Shadow Transport Secretary, and before they explain why they're so het up about things now, why did they welcome them when they were in office? There was no answer to those questions. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't believe there were very many questions in that diatribe from the Shadow Justice Secretary. On sentencing, the pause in the guideline was communicated. That's a matter for the Sentencing Council. I will, of course, engage with the judiciary to make sure all is understood regarding the pause. Nothing has changed in relation to the ordering of pre-sentencing reports by judges in all the circumstances in which they ordinarily would. The guideline is what has been paused, and it will now not come into effect until Parliament has had its say. And also, Madam Deputy Speaker, he references two specific individuals, and this is the difference between me and him. I don't make it personal. I just focus on the job, and I get the job done.
Mother of the House, Diane Abbott.
I realise this is not a popular view in the House.
Well, we've been listening to a barnstorming back and forth in the House of Commons between the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Shabana Mahmood said she'll be bringing forward a short bill in short time in order to rectify what she calls two-tiered justice guidelines that have been now suspended by the Sentencing Council.
Yes, and Robert Jenrick, he had some tough words, didn't he? Calling her a two-tier, second-tier Justice Secretary, and saying, really, that it was all a little bit too late and they should have just gone with the bill that he proposed weeks ago. So there you go, a bit of a tiff there in the House of Commons, but it does look like this bill is being introduced, and that will well, be a positive.
Well, listening to it all was, of course, our political editor, Christopher Hope. So let's get the analysis now. Chris, this was a big seismic moment in the House of Commons. On the one hand, the government responding quickly. On the other, the opposition saying they haven't responded quickly enough.
Yes, hi Tom, Emily. Yeah, a big moment, I think, for the Tory party. The first time the Tories have laid a glove, really, on Labour in recent weeks on a policy, of course, which started life under the last Tory government, allowed to happen, allowed to gestate, and then emerge 6 weeks ago with just a 6-week gap before it came in. And it would have been today to allow judges to take into account various characteristics on culture, race, gender, and the like when sentencing someone in front of them, but not on issue of white men over 25. So I think, you know, a real moment here for Robert Jenrick, showing how he is, of all the front benchers in the Tory party, the most effective, forcing Shabana Mahmood onto the back foot. They all agree that this idea is wrong. Shabana Mahmood has called it two-tier justice and did so there. But I think the slowness to deal with it is what Robert Jenrick was making clear there. Why not do this weeks ago? Why have this strange period of 3 or 4 weeks before the government can pass a law to overrule what the council wants? I also think the future of the Sentencing Council chair is under question now. He has now been undermined by his own government, and indeed whether he lasts that long now is one for the future.
Mood, didn't he, there? And also whether no one has been sentenced under these two-tier guidelines is what he asked as well. I'm not sure he got an answer to that. It was just a strong back and forth. But what happens now, then, in terms of the legislation, Christopher?
Well, now it's been introduced. There's a couple of days wait before it can have its second reading, then it goes forward. We are told by Number 10 yesterday that it won't be law before Easter. That's April the 20th, maybe shortly after that. But the Sentencing Council has spared the blushes of Shabana Mahmood. You wouldn't want to see 3 or 4 weeks of the wrong guidance being used in courts. That would have, of course, prompted immediate appeals for all of those. So that hasn't happened. And instead, there will be a pause while that happens. I think there's been a loss of faith here. They've been slow to act by the government. They don't really use or recognise the size of their majority. They could have gone through the motions weeks ago. And instead, they wrote letters to and from the council. They replied, of course, on Friday saying we're not going to do it. I spoke to Keir Starmer in Hartlepool on Friday. He made very clear all options on the table. And by Monday, the PM also told us they're going to take action, and that forced the hand yesterday and overnight of the Sentencing Council. So I think, again, they've been slow to act. They got there in the end. But all that's happening here, by the way, is that some guidance which all parties admit is wrong is being removed from advising judges, and that's probably the right thing.
And I suppose the row now becomes what the Labour Party is saying, a surgical removal of the offending text within the guidelines, versus what Robert Jenrick there was saying, an overhaul of the council, a responsibility for ministers going into the future. Because what Jenrick's speech there was moving on to, not just about these two-tier guidance, but about Lord Justice Davis and what he's been saying in the media. I mean, promoting policy off his own. Or Joanna Robinson, a member of the council, who called the Illegal Migration Act appalling. It sounds like the Tories are now shifting towards questioning the role and the powers of the Sentencing Council as a whole, whereas the Labour position is more surgical and targeted with this specific line that they don't like in the advice.
That's right. What they can do, I'm yet to see the full detail, it's just been published in the Commons, but they can amend probably Section 124 of the Criminals and Justice Act 2009, which means that rather than the council asking for advice from ministers, they can actually overrule it. I think that's where this policy will go, but it will take time. And I think the question mark over why the government appears to be happy to outsource the administration of bills published in the House of Commons when the judges are so far removed from what ordinary people think. But on a wider issue, this has been effective opposition, I think, by the Tory party. And earlier we heard from Kemi Badenoch. She, of course, was saying today is a day when Labour's jobs tax should be highlighted. On Sunday, national insurance will go up by 1.25% for companies, for employers, and that should filter down onto you and me as employees, maybe worth £3,500 off what we earn by 20
2030. And earlier I spoke to Kemi Badenoch, the leader, asking her about her record on cost of living crisis and other things too. And here's what she told me for GB News. Badenoch, thank you for joining us today on GB News. We're £3,500 worse off by 2030 because of Labour's job tax, you say today. But didn't the cost of living crisis start under the Tory party? Isn't it time you apologise for that before you start criticising Labour?
We spent a lot of money during COVID, and of course that meant that there was a cost of living crisis after that. A once-in-a-generation global pandemic that affected every country in the world is a totally different thing from what is happening now, which is all of us suffering because of Labour's choices. They made bad choices, and the chickens are coming home to roost. And the people who are paying for this are hardworking families out there, your viewers. And that's why today I'm talking about that £3,500 hit and the £1,000 that's going to be happening yearly with bills going up. Energy bills, water bills, council tax. We've got local elections coming up. People need to vote Conservative. We're the only ones who will deliver lower taxes and better services.
But you didn't, did you? Of course, taxes went up to a record high. I know you'll say due to COVID or the energy shock caused by Ukraine, but you've lost trust with the British people. That's the problem.
But it is true. It was because of COVID. It was because of the energy shock from Ukraine. We can't pretend that that wasn't the case. But we are the only party that really believes in lower taxes. Labour doesn't believe that. We do. And we are the opposition. We need to make sure that they course correct. Labour doesn't really understand how the economy works. They don't understand what it takes to run a business, the amount of graft that you need to get a business going. They've all worked in trade unions, public sector. They don't understand how much risk people take. We've got to get that message across, that we're the only ones who are standing up for all those hardworking people out there who are hit by these costs.
With Donald Trump, you mentioned earlier in your press conference that you won't criticise Labour's government for not doing retaliatory tariffs, as we expect them to do later this week. Is that right, though? Your opposition, you're meant to oppose.
Yes, but we have to oppose bad things, not when people are making the right decisions. What happens with if we put on retaliatory tariffs? We start a trade war, things are escalating. Who pays? We pay. If you slap tariffs on US goods that are coming here, they're going to be more expensive for the people here who want to buy them. I do not want us to do anything that's going to make life more expensive. Now, this may be something that we have to revisit later. It depends on exactly what the US is doing, for example. If they're putting tariffs on steel, we don't really export steel to the US. So putting tariffs on that is not going to make any difference. We have a steel plant that's closing because it's not viable. Labour has made a mess of what's happening in Scunthorpe. We were the party that was fixing that problem. Labour have taken over, and now it's, gone. It looks like it's gone completely. We need to be back so that we can help fix the economy and make the right choices that they're not making.
Will you reverse what you call Labour's jobs tax?
We need to make sure that we stop putting taxes on working people. We would not have done this. We would not have done this. And what I need to see now is where we end up in 4 years' time. What are all the things that we need to do, stripping out the mess that they made? In 4 years' time, we're going to need a party that can clear up Labour's mess, that has the experience, the credibility, the knowledge, the expertise. Only the Conservatives can do that.
The police are quite active, aren't they, in, it seems, knocking on doors over social media posts. There's a WhatsApp group that got two parents in trouble in Hertfordshire at the weekend. What do you think of this? Should the police stop literally policing remarks on social media accounts?
I don't think it's a good use of police time. And Chris, you will know I built my reputation on fighting a lot of the nonsense that was going on across the state. I believe in common sense. We need common sense in this country. And sometimes I think it might be easy to get your arrest numbers up by going to somebody who's putting, unpleasant messages online than catching criminals. What I want to see the police doing is catching criminals, the burglars, the people who are stabbing everyone, the ones who are committing sexual assaults. Let's get those people in the prisons, not the people who are sending nasty WhatsApps.
So just stop policing social media?
Well, I had this in my own constituency. You'll remember Alison Pearson had people visiting her because of something that may or may not have been a non-hate crime incident. This is one of the things that we're tackling. This is the law being over-interpreted. We've had non-hate crime incidents since 1999. It's only now that we've started seeing people being harassed on their doorstep for things that they may have put on Twitter that are innocent. We need to stop all this nonsense. It is time to bring back common sense to policing and to our justice system.
Have you watched Adolescence yet? The PM had a meeting yesterday around this Netflix show. Do you think white boys are being wrongly singled out here?
Well, I think adolescence is a fictional story. It's based on a real story, but my understanding is that the boy who committed that crime was not white. So people can do whatever they like in fiction. The Prime Minister should not be building policy on fiction. He should be building policy on reality. What is the reality? The phones are disrupting schools, and not enough schools have effective bans. When I asked him last week about having a ban at PMQs, what did he say? That it wasn't necessary. He believes it's a gimmick. So he's not doing the things that we need to do in reality. He's watching Netflix and having roundtables about a Netflix documentary. It's a gimmick. He thinks that he's going to touch the people of this country. Oh, they're all watching Netflix, so I'll just talk about the thing they're watching on TV. No, he needs to talk about what's happening in their lives right now. That's the bills that are going up, the jobs tax that's going to kill jobs, lower wages, and let's get phones out of schools as well, because it's distracting our young people.
Do white boys get a raw deal in this country?
I don't think that we should start splitting people according to ethnicity in that way. When I was a minister, I put out a report that showed that white working class boys, not white boys, white working class boys were the most disadvantaged. And I fought for them. Dawn Butler was calling me the white face, the black face of white supremacy, all sorts of nonsense, because I was talking about common sense. No one has done more than me in order to highlight the truth and get us to start treating everyone in this country the same, irrespective of what colour their skin is. We've got to move away from all these characteristics that are dividing us and start talking about the thing that we all share, which is being British.
Just very finally, we are a Christian country. There's a lot of talk about Eid on the public sphere, not much about Easter. Does that make you worried?
Well, I think that we should talk more about Easter. We are a Christian country. I firmly believe that. You know, I come from a Christian background. My grandfather was a reverend in the Methodist Church. I grew up in a Christian household, and I love Easter. It comes with spring, and the sunshine comes in. So we have freedom of religion in this country. We should make sure that people are free to celebrate their religion, not impose it on other people. Whatever the religion, let's not impose it. But yeah, let's talk more about Easter. Why not?
Well, that was Kemi Badenoch speaking to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Of course, she mentioned that the Conservatives are standing in these local elections. Just wanted to remind you that so too are the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Reform Party, the Greens and indeed others, including independents, all standing on the 1st of May in the local elections.
Right. Well, in other news, it is the breaking news that came into us in the last hour. Donald Trump, yes, he's formally signed off Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius. Number 10 has said... should we get the latest with GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster? Catherine, does this mean essentially that we're one step closer to handing over sovereignty of these islands?
Well, yes, it sounds very much like it, because the Prime Minister's official spokesman this morning said that it is now between us and the Mauritian government to finalise the deal following the discussions with the United States. Now, pushed on that, he said that the President recognises the strength of the deal. And cast your mind back a few weeks to the Prime Minister being in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. Donald Trump at that point was asked about it, and he said, I have a feeling it's going to work out very well. I think we will be inclined to go along with your country. Now, that was not the line that many people here were expecting from the US president. There was a lot of expectation that America could come along and veto the deal when Trump came in. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, said to be very concerned about it, but it sounds now like it is back, with the final details being negotiated between Mauritius and us. Of course, Mauritius changed their government a few months ago, and they then said that the previous deal was not good enough. So it sounds like America is happy to go along with it. And I think a lot of people will be disappointed, because we've got this military base joint with the United States in the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia. It's very, very important. And now we're going to have a situation where we hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius, but we pay £90 million a year for 99 years to lease back the use of this military base. That's going to be front-loaded, so it's going to come more money up front, and it hasn't been ruled out that might come out of the defence budget.
This is, I mean, an astonishing piece of news. When we all add it up together, the fact that the defence budget increase will be less because it's likely to pay for this lease that we're paying that we didn't used to have to pay because we own the islands. And yet we're giving away the islands, and on top of that, we've spent months on months, not just negotiating with the Mauritian government, but also with the Americans, all to allow us to give away the islands. Catherine Forster, thanks for bringing us this news. Thanks for being there with the Prime Minister's spokesman a little bit earlier. We'll catch up with you, of course, throughout the day on GB News.
We will indeed, but let's speak to a spokesperson for Chagosian Voices and a third-generation Chagosian himself, Jean-Francois Nellen. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, how do you feel about this news? Trump seems happy with this deal.
Yeah, it came as a shock when this was announced. But like Catherine was saying earlier, now the Prime Minister saying, oh, it's up to them and the Mauritian government to finalise a deal. But then that shows you, again, the indigenous rights of Chagosian are not being respected. Chagosian were not meaningfully consulted into that deal. What's happened to the Chagosian?
It's a big question because, of course, the government's spoken with the Mauritians, spoken with the Americans, spoken with the UN, but the one group of people the government seemingly hasn't spoken with are the people who call the Chagos Islands their home. And just let us know, for the people that haven't been following this very closely, what do the Chagosians want to happen to the Chagos Islands?
Well, firstly, the Chagosian want their right to be respected. They want like a right to self-determination, like a referendum, to decide. Chagosian is not Mauritian. I does not recognize myself as a Mauritian. I'm a Chagosian. So we're asking the Prime Minister, I know like they keep saying about the RCJ advisory opinion, which we know is not binding, but the same RCJ advisory opinion has said the right of the Chagosian should be protected and respected. Why the Prime Minister is ignoring this part of it and keep going along to say, oh yeah, we need to send the island, give the island to Mauritius. The island has been British since 1840, the Paris Treaty. Why the sudden change? Is this because of the narrative of his friend, Philip's son?
And what are you worried about that will happen? These islands come under Mauritian control. What are you worried about?
Well, the most fear of the Chagosian, their story will be erased. The Mauritius does not recognize Chagosian as a people. They are calling us Mauritian. Even we dated back to the 18th centuries where French brought slaves on the island to work in the copra plantation. But Mauritius does not recognize us. They are saying those islands now, they did the election campaign on this. They say, oh, now we have our island back and we're going to do whatever we want. So what they are going to do is they have said they are going to be building hotels similar like the Maldives. So not only like fearing about our identity, they are going to be damaged pristine environment onto the Chagos, which is one of the largest marine protection area.
I mean, it does sound extraordinary that the Prime Minister, who himself, Keir Starmer, used to be a human rights lawyer, is now pushing ahead with a deal that will wipe away your ethnic and national identity. Chagosians will be forced to live under the diktat and rule of a country that doesn't recognise their own ethnicity. I mean, that's an astonishing state of affairs.
Yeah, Jean-Francois Nellen, thank you very much indeed. You're a spokesperson for Chagosian Voices and a third-generation Chagosian.
Thank you.
It looks like it's just going to go ahead, doesn't it? It looks like we're going to be paying these billions of pounds or however much it's going to cost us all.
And as was mentioned, one of the lawyers for the Mauritian government is a close friend of Keir Starmer, Philip Sands.
And no worry about, Chinese infiltration, no worry about that sort of thing. Is Trump not worried about that? Trump not worried about that? No, doesn't seem like it.
Well, from one British giveaway to another.
Very good.
We want to make sure that your spring is spectacular in our latest Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. Here are all the details you need.
There's just 3 days remaining to spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, We'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag and not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. Hurry, lines close on Friday. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
You can smack, thwack, thump, and everyone's got a different definition of what it is.
I'm not an idiot.
Smacking
And most parents
is
aren't idiots. They can draw a distinction between those.
Lazy, shortcut parenting, and there's no case in which it's justified. Smacking spreads. So you smack one, they're going to smack their siblings. They're going to go into school and disagree with other children and give them a whack. And then what about, do you give proxy rights to teachers, nursery workers?
No.
And in fact, no, you don't. So you love your child so much that you're going to smack them. Only you. It's special for you.
Hang on a minute, Anna May. Are you, just so we're clear, Anna May, are you accusing Bev of being a bad mother or something here?
I'm saying I can't believe that in 2025 somebody would come on TV and defend doing something to a child that wouldn't be acceptable to a
Bev,
dog.
do you want to come back to that?
If you smack a dog in the street, Bev, if you smack a dog in the street,
is almost every parent is smacking their child, except they won't admit it. And so what you've developed by that sort of parenting, it is true, is you've developed a culture of shame, whereby parents might have that instinct, as mammals will have, whether it's a monkey or a cat or a lion. In the natural world, the adult, the parent of that young cub, whatever it is, will occasionally.
What are we talking about here? Are we talking about hurting children with your hand, and also not even having a standard? Paediatricians are saying don't do it. And also this argument, I know what's going to come next. You're going to say, oh, the police could be involved. Aren't they going to be too busy to do this? Guess what? Children can't dial 999, particularly the very young ones.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 2. Now, legal challenges to tax on private schools are being heard at the High Court today.
Yeah, this is really ramping up. Nearly 20 families and several faith schools are bringing legal action against the Treasury, claiming the new VAT on fees is discriminatory and a breach of human rights law.
Well, joining us from outside the High Court is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, what's going on today?
Good afternoon, guys. Yeah, the hearing began this morning at about 10 a.m. It will last for 3 days. The session just began again this afternoon about 2 o'clock. Earlier today, I was chatting to some of the campaigners, as you said, faith schools. Actually, one of the main arguments being put forward here is that it disproportionately affects those with special needs or require extra care. And I chatted to Leanne and Charlie earlier today. They're a parent and a pupil. Charlie relies on a wheelchair. He has hearing difficulties. So for him, of course, his small independent school provides him with the extra care that's important to him. This is what they had to say to me earlier today.
So we are here because the VAT on school fees, in particularly for children like Charlie, is really discriminative. There are a lot of children in independent schools that aren't like rich people, which has been advertised widely in the media. We are groups of people who, in Charlie's case, literally cannot access education anywhere else other than in an independent setting.
So since the introduction of that VAT on school fees in January, what's been the impact for you guys specifically?
So I'm currently working 7 days a week. I work early in the morning till late at night. We've had a 14% increase in our fees, so the school has swallowed part of the increase, but it's still had a massive effect on us. The long and the short of it is, this isn't sustainable working like this, and we need this legislation to be thrown out.
So you heard Leanne saying there, she now works 7 days a week to support Charlie and his needs. As I said before that clip, this is the first day of a 3-day hearing, so we won't hear any result today. But if there's a chance that it goes against the government, it's a serious blow to their credibility, because this was one of the headline measures in the manifesto. So if they vote against, or rather if the judges rule against them, it's a massive problem for the Treasury, and Rachel Reeves is listed as a defendant in this case today.
Terry, thank you very much indeed. Outside the High Court, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not just going to impact, toffs at Eton.
Well,
it's
no,
going to
they're
impact.
going to be fine.
Yeah, they might be able to afford the extra 20% or whatever it is.
The millionaires aren't going to notice it at all. It's the people who are only just about there at the schools, or the people who rely on the charitable arms of the schools, that the reason they receive charity status and therefore don't have that VAT is because they provide bursaries, it's because they provide scholarships, it's because they do all those things for people that might not otherwise afford it. Will that all go?
Also, I just fundamentally don't believe it's going to raise any money. What was it, Rachel Reeves' sister, who's also an MP, caught saying that the number one thing she would do is get rid of private schools. I'm sorry, but seriously, could that get any more student union if you tried? Yeah, the number one thing I want to do when I get into power is remove those evil private schools because, unfair or something.
Because I can't think of a second-order effect of a policy.
I mean, seriously, it's pathetic.
Clearly what happens is then all these children go into state schools, but also...
Makes it worse for everyone.
Do their parents stop paying for extra tuition? Do you ban tutors after school?
Exactly. You can always pay for an advantage.
Some parents might have more books at home than others. Do you ban those?
Exactly.
Some children might have access to educational materials, maybe school trips. Maybe they'll go to a museum. Do you ban children whose parents have more free time from going to the British Museum on a weekend?
I think some people would.
At what point do you stop allowing people to spend their own money or their own time how they so choose? I mean, we're going further and further away from a free society.
Yeah, we're never going to be equal, Some children are brighter than others. Some children, as you say, have parents who care about their education, some don't. You can't level the playing field unless you literally want to live in a communist state where you take everyone's children and put them in the... And even then, some will just be better than others.
Well, I think what we should do is obviously rip children away from their mothers at the point of birth, sort them into categories from alpha, beta, gamma down to omega, and predetermine their role in life from a state-facilitated situation.
Bridget Phillipson can decide.
I think that would be the best, most equal way that we could rear our children. One central child-rearing facility. I think that would be best.
Right, that's what's coming up on today's show. Yes, it is this awful April avalanche that has been unleashed on everyone. All of our bills seem to be going up. Also, MP's pay seems to be going up, which is nice for them. More on that after the headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you. The top stories. Donald Trump has signed off on the UK's deal to hand the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Number 10 has said the details of the agreements with the Mauritian government are now being finalised, having been approved by the US President. The Prime Minister's official spokesman says while details are now being finalised with the government, there the President has recognised the strength of the deal. Elsewhere, millions of households across the country will see their bills increase today, from energy and water prices to council tax and stamp duty. The 7 hikes in prices and tax coincide with the new financial year in what's being dubbed Awful April for consumers. Water bills are increasing by an average of £10 a month in England and Wales, while gas and electricity are up by £111 a year. Meanwhile, the basic salary for members of Parliament has increased by 2.8%. Sir Keir Starmer visited the City of London this morning as the annual increases to the National Living Wage and National Minimum Wage take effect today. Shadow Business and Trade Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News.
It all feels like it's coming at once. This is a difficult April for so many people, and where the government has real cause, such as the national insurance jobs tax, which is cascading through the economy in the way that we said 7 months ago, that's the area that the government has the most ability to change things, even at this late stage.
The cost of living is already unbearable. That's what the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said today during a press conference with Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer Mel Stride. The press conference comes as the Conservatives accuse Labour of introducing a jobs tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves increased the national insurance for employers in her budget last year, which comes into force on the 6th of April. Employers' national insurance contributions will increase from 13.8% to 15%. And those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. The M8 in Glasgow is partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 15 and 16 from Townhead to Craighall, causing delays. Buses replaced trains between Cleethorpes and Barton on Humber because of a faulty train. In Cheshire, the A51 is closed each way along Tarvin Road at Bolton in Chester for an investigation with delays as you divert. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is closed each way at Braunswell after an accident causing queues. And the M40 from Northamptonshire into Oxfordshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 10 and 11 from Brackley to Banbury, causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20 to 3 and the awful April avalanche is unleashed. Sadly, we're not fooling you because you probably know water and energy bills
have gone up.
Council and car tax
up as well.
Stamp duty and broadband.
You guessed it by now, up.
Well, welcome to what's being dubbed awful April. Millions are set to face a price hike from today, all while MPs, well, they get a pay rise.
Yeah, not a great look, is it, really? Well, GB News reporter Sophie Reaper joins us from Hartlepool, where she's been speaking to people. Oh, lots of windy by the coast. Sophie, what are people saying to you, then?
Well, the reaction has been a very strong one here in Hartlepool, but I just want to address the beautiful location where we are today. Earlier on today, we were at the marina in Hartlepool, but we thought we'd do one better for you, Tom and Emily, on Good Afternoon Britain, and we've come to the gorgeous coastline so that you can take the view in of the North Sea here in Hartlepool. Now, we're bracing the wind here. It is very windy, but it is absolutely gorgeous. However, despite that, there is a dark cloud hanging over Hartlepool today, and in fact over the rest of the UK, because as you say, we have now entered awful April. People's bills are going through the roof across the board, and there's a lot of concern, not just here but all over the country, as to how they're going to cope over the coming weeks and months. Now, there's also another reason we've brought you to this particular location, and that is because this is the Hugh Battery Memorial, which interestingly is the only World War I battlefield on British soil, the only one. So we thought we'd bring you here because earlier on today in Hartlepool, we were speaking to a veteran, a Royal Navy veteran who was a submariner, who was talking to us about the impact of awful April and how he's going to try and have to budget to try and survive over the next few months. Here's what he had to say.
A letter saying I got a £20 wage increase for my pension, and then automatically the next day I got a letter from Hartlepool Council that raised my council tax by £20.
So essentially you've not benefited?
It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it seems to be happening with all the bills.
How does it make you feel that you served your country as a submariner, and yet you've now found that in retirement you're having to face these economic issues?
Well, I'm very proud of being in the Royal Navy and submarines, a veteran, but I don't think they look after us at all. Nothing. I have known veterans who live on the streets, and yet the Grand Hotel's just opened full of immigrants, and they get £30 a day for 7 days a week.
And how does it make you feel to know that? Well, how does it feel that you feel you're essentially not getting any support?
Nothing at all. No, I think there's something wrong with the government at the moment. So we're just being let down.
And in terms of all these price rises, what kind of support would you like to see for people such as yourself?
Well, obviously, I'd just like to see veterans looked after, you know, supported by what they've done for the country. That's all it is. Nothing else, just to be looked after a bit more.
It's incredibly difficult, of course, to hear from anybody that they're struggling, but when you hear it from a veteran who's saying that they feel they've got no support after everything they've done for our country, it is truly so hard to hear that. And that is going to be the case, unfortunately, across the board. We've been in Hartlepool all day today. We've spoken to local people, local residents. We've spoken to business owners. This seems like it's going to be something that people are going to have to try really hard to balance, given the fact that bills are going up across the board. It's not just one, it's not just two. These are bills across the board that people are now going to have to try and cope with.
Yeah, absolutely. Sophie, thank you very much. Very interesting to hear from the people of Hartlepool on this one. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you getting in touch to just say it's going to be extremely difficult to make ends meet. No pay rises for years because your boss can't afford it. or he says he can't afford it for you and your colleagues, and the prices have gone up, so just less and less disposable income. Also, it's quite interesting, massive impact on people giving to charity.
Yeah, that will have collapsed.
Apparently 4 million people, 4 million fewer people are giving to charity than before COVID.
Just at the time people need the charity more. Well, John has got in touch. He said it's not just awful April, it's avaricious April. Greedy energy utility and train companies, government all taking advantage.
And on the minimum wage rise, Kate says, increasing the minimum wage by this much will bring a lot of people into paying tax, so they won't feel any better off, especially taking into account the rises in bills and food. Yes, you know, you might get £1 or £2 extra an hour, but then how much more is everything going to cost?
But also, I mean, the price of that food, the price of those bills, people working in the service industry, where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from the products and services that they produce. Those prices will go up.
Yeah, it does annoy me, Keir Starmer saying, we're raising wages. Well, you're not raising wages. You're asking businesses, or forcing businesses to raise wages, even if they can't afford to.
Even if there's been no product... Because normally wages go up if you're more productive.
Well,
normally technology helps that. You know, wages can rise if productivity increases. If productivity stays the same, but wages go up, that's inflationary.
Well, we'll see. Karina says everyone is poorer, everyone is fed up. What makes it even worse is we know it will continue to get worse every single day. Oh, Karina, I hope your situation improves. Apparently even stamps are going up.
Yeah.
Sharon says she's done channeling her Jane Austen. Presumably she means writing letters.
Yeah. No, that would make more sense, rather than anything else that Jane Austen got up to.
We can all lend to budget. That's a shiny silver lining.
Certainly can. I was just reading about the Hugh Battery Museum where Sophie was up in Hartlepool. Commemorates the 1914 bombardment of Hartlepool from the German Imperial Navy. You don't often hear about the parts of the UK that were attacked during the First World War, but Hartlepool was one of them.
Very interesting.
As well as Scarborough and all sorts of other port towns.
And Delina says, how lovely, minimum wage goes up and I now surpass the outdated income tax threshold. Thanks for absolutely nothing, Sakir. Well, there you go.
Well, if you want to escape it all, perhaps you want some sunshine, some more sunshine in some of these European holiday destinations. Well, here's your list.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're heading further afield over the next few days, it is going to be unsettled across much of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece, where very lively showers and thunderstorms will continue during Wednesday. Showery for southern Italy, but northern Italy largely fine with some sunshine. South of France into Spain and Portugal. We've got spells of rain moving in along with a gusty wind, and that unsettled weather sticks around for the end of the week, whilst the showers become fewer and less frequent in Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Blue skies pretty much all the way today. Temperatures, well, varying quite a bit across the country. Some chilliness on the coasts and across the south where the wind is quite brisk. The isobars close together here. But this area of high pressure is providing, as I say, quite a lot of sunshine. There's a bit of a breeze along some North Sea coast and the western side of Scotland as well. With the breeze coming from the south here, I think parts of northern Scotland may see the highest temperatures today, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius along the Moray Firth. A little cooler further south, particularly along the coasts where we've got that breeze, and some of those North Sea coasts will be on the chilly side too, but generally temperatures getting into the mid-teens for most. Temperatures will drop off a little bit through this evening, quite rapidly under what will be largely clear skies. Just some straggly bits of cloud, just threatening some eastern coasts at times, but generally dry and clear through the evening across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. Further south also we've got those clear skies. Still that noticeable breeze and getting quite gusty across the southwest of England through the day today, particularly in western parts of Devon and Cornwall. Some lively gusts through this evening and overnight. The brisk breeze in the south will help to keep the temperatures up. Just a bit of cloud likely to form over the hills of northern England and eastern Scotland, and again along some coasts perhaps as that easterly breeze continues to bring the cooler winds from the North Sea. Inland, where we've got some shelter, temperatures could again just dip down to freezing. Most towns and cities staying a few degrees above, but certainly a fresh start to Wednesday. But once the sun is up, it's another sparkling day of sunshine to come tomorrow. Just again, the threat of some har on the coast of eastern Scotland. Any early cloud over the hills should disappear. Plenty of blue skies, long sunny spells. Again, feeling cool with a bit of a breeze in the south, but temperatures again for most in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah,
as I say, now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 to 3 on this, the 1st of April. Now, the popular conservatism group has today launched a new economic forecasting agency to compete with the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Yes, and the group's director has said that given the government's reliance on forecasts to make big tax and spending decisions running into many billions of pounds, it is vital that a variety of different econometric approaches are deployed. That shouldn't have been that difficult.
Well, let's speak to the director of the popular conservatism group now, and popular forecasts too, Mark Littlewood. So, Mark, tell us, what are these new forecast models?
Well, Tom, Emily, as you rightly said, I think it's important to have competition here, because just slight changes in growth forecasting can be worth billions of pounds, as you've said. I mean, downgrading our forecast from 2% to 1% wipes 25 billion off the economy. So we've come up with 3 new models. One just assumes that the OBR is a bit too optimistic, that they don't really consider that dark clouds might be gathering. So we just knock off 0.4% for their prediction this year and 0.3% for all successive years. Who knows what might happen? War, pestilence, famine, something that might knock us backwards. So that relies on the OBR model that says they're a bit too upbeat. We call that the glass half empty model. The second one was to say, well, nobody really knows. Growth will probably be somewhere between 0.5 and 2.5% in any given year. Let's just generate some random numbers between 0.5 and 2.5%. And let's see that those random numbers turn out to be better than the OBR forecast. And then last but not least, we took a more serious model. We sort of said what might affect things in the economy. And we alighted on the idea to look at the number of goals scored in any Premier League season, and assume that the more goals that are scored, the better for the economy. When a goal's scored, fans tend to buy more pints of beer to celebrate. That's great for the hospitality sector. They tend to buy more replica shirts. That's great for the textile industry. They tend to scream and shout a lot. That means they buy cough syrup and throat lozenges. That's good for the pharmaceutical industry. So we took the square root of the number of goals scored in any Premier League season, assumed a time lag of 5 years, and then divided that number by 25. That gives you growth of 1.4% this year, then 1.3% in the next 3 years, and then 1.4% again in 2029. So I'm very keen to see whether our new modelling, all of which I've managed to design in under half an hour at the expense of zero to the taxpayer, actually compares well or favourably with the OBR forecast between now and the end of the decade. I'm pretty sure one of my models will beat the OBR.
What do you reckon, Tom? Which one would you go for?
Oh, goodness, I do love the most complicated, and clearly a lot of work has gone into this, Mark. And I do want to just quickly ask you, because we don't have much time left, is the date today, the 1st of April, particularly important to this release of your new 3 models?
I thought it was vital to release it on precisely this day, Tom, and your viewers and listeners might derive from that whatever they will. So it's an important day to release it on, but I still think an important point about how wrong the OBR can be.
Absolutely. Mark Littlewood, thank you very much. Director of the Popular Conservatives and now Popular Forecasts.
Yeah.
So there you go, trademark that one.
Here's the thing, these random numbers, they probably will be more accurate than the OBR.
I don't trust the OBR. Very, very difficult. Finger in the air stuff, isn't it, really? Anyway, that's the end of the show.
Absolutely. Martin Daubney's up next. Stay with us here on GB News.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Hope you're enjoying these sunny skies. There's more of them to come tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow, pretty similar day to today. Chilly start, feeling warm in the afternoon, sunshine. Some cool breezes, though, quite noticeable along the south coast today, and particularly in the southwest of England this evening. Some lively gusts. A bit breezy, too, on some of these North Sea coasts. That could just blow in a little bit of low cloud along that east coast, and we could see some low cloud developing over the Pennines too. Temperatures dipping away with the clear skies, close to freezing in some rural spots, particularly across parts of southern Scotland. Enough of a breeze to keep the temperatures up across southern England, but certainly, yes, a chilly start to the morning across parts of Scotland. Just a hint of frost there on the map. We probably won't be frosty across the coast of Aberdeenshire with a lot of mist and low cloud in the area, and some of the hills too across eastern Scotland likely to start a bit grey. Same goes for northern England. As I said, some of that cloud forming on the hills through the night. Further south, though, generally a clear start to Wednesday, and then we'll see another pretty sunny day. Still a noticeable breeze blowing along the south coast, and the breeze, if anything, a little stronger for the likes of East Anglia, Lincolnshire, bringing a cooler feel. Temperatures probably a degree or so down come the afternoon compared to today's values, particularly if any of that har sticks in the east of Scotland. And where we're on the coast in the east, temperatures struggling to get into the teens, but elsewhere mid, even high teens again over the highlands of Scotland. Bit of a change for Thursday, more cloud in the southwest, Devon, Cornwall and parts of South Wales. Thicker cloud here, maybe even seeing a few showers coming in. Elsewhere, though, it's another sunny day. Still cool on the east coast, but elsewhere, temperatures ticking up a little bit by Thursday, more widely into the high teens, and we could squeak up to the low 20s across parts of the southeast, but cooler with that showery rain across the southwest. Bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
It's all kicking off in the world of bowling, because an historic bowls club could be forced to close after a staggering 2,000% parking fee hike. Members, many of them of course elderly, say they can't afford the jump from 40 quid to an astonishing £840. Now, for some, the club is their social lifeline, but the council insists that the change is necessary to ease financial pressures. Well, of course they would. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the club captain of Eastbourne Parade Bowls Club, Pete Hensman. Pete, welcome to the show. This is an astonishing hike in the car parking costs. It must have simply bowled you all over.
Yeah, to use a phrase, you're quite right. We sort of staggered and worried because of the possibility of closing us.
What's the reaction been within the club to what seems like an eye-watering increase?
Well, as you said, several of our members are saying, we just can't join, we can't afford it. The bus service around here is not particularly good, and they can't carry their bowls or get to the club.
And you've been around since 1897. You've got 70 members, got some wonderful pictures there on screens, look, of people just getting together. Absolutely wonderful thing to do. Healthy physically, healthy mentally, and of course a lot of people lose more friends as they get on. Have the council been remotely forthcoming in seeing the light?
I think they've got a bit of a panic on. We got a message inviting us to join the chairman of the council tomorrow.